subscribe, like the video, and, if possible, join Patreon. But if you don't have much money, you can support the channel by watching the novels on euroaudiobooks.com. Remember that you can participate in the polls so that your favorite novel gets published for free.
Synopsis. Gotham City is a city with simple folk customs and a land of outstanding people. Batman hasn't appeared yet, and Gotham is still dominated by the mafia. Supervillains are still gestating in the darkness of Gotham. Will appear at any time. A trainee police officer from the Arkham Division was standing on the stage in Gotham, shouting, "Be fearless in life and death. Stop the bad guys." Chapter 1 across Arkham. Oh shit. Moo, why are you still sitting in the toilet? Is that damn toilet so attractive? There was a loud knock on the toilet door, and a rough voice shouted outside. Niji sat on the toilet holding an adult magazine and looked at the shaking toilet door in confusion. Where's this? No, where am I? Niji stared, and memories echoed in his mind, making him clearly understand what the trick of fate was. The Statue of Liberty holding the torch high. When he finally got on the plane back home and closed his eyes to take a rest, he was refreshed and transported here. Gotham. What the hell, FK Squid? Meowji stood up directly, and identity information flooded into his brain. He had the same name and surname, Meowji. He was a Chinese American, his parents were deceased, and he was a trainee police officer at the Arkham Police Department in Gotham City. Please spare me. Niji plopped down and sat back on the toilet, his face turned white. He just attended a third-rate public university in Chicago for a few years, so he wouldn't be sent to Gotham. Life is not so miserable, right? Jumping directly from the difficulty level of the school gun battle server to this place where natural disasters have forced the server to fail and the world has been destroyed several times. Bang! The toilet door was pushed open, and a strong white man wearing a police uniform pinched his nose and roared. "What are you going to do?" Niji stared and blinked innocently. "The director has already spoken. If we can't find the little thief who stole the things, he will tell us all to get out. What are you still doing? Let's go." As he said this, the strong white man reached out and grabbed Niji by the shoulders, dragging him outside. His anxious expression was not false at all. At this time, Niji had also accepted all the memories and understood who the guy in front of him was. Jerry Cabson was partnered with his trainee police officer at the same time, and he was talking about the chief. It was none other than Chief Weaver of the Arkham Division, his immediate boss's boss. His house was raided by snitches last night, and all his valuables were taken away. As the police chief, he was robbed by snitches. Wei Fei was furious. When he came to work today, he got angry and almost scolded everyone in the precinct, including the police dog. And Niji happened to be taking a paid shit in the toilet. "Wait, I'm just wiping my butt. Don't pull me. Trash. They're all a bunch of trash." Wei Fei's angry scolding could be heard from far away in the conference room, and he kept pacing back and forth in front of the conference table, opening the door quietly from behind. Just like a late student, he quietly walked along the wall to where Niji sat down at the end of the table, looking around curiously. Gotham City is a city with simple folk customs and outstanding people. Arkham is the most famous Arkham Asylum. For any villain who has not been to Arkham Asylum, his journey as a villain must be incomplete. However, what worries Niji even more is Batman, the superhero in DC Comics, the Dark Knight of Gotham, the head of the Wayne family, and Bruce Wayne, whose parents both died. However, the memory in my mind does not contain Batman or anything else. It is all a useless yellow waste. This account is useless, but being able to join the police station can be considered as having a job. At least you don't have to worry about living on the street, Niji thought to himself. "Speak. You're all deaf." Wei Fei, who suddenly stopped in front, roared again. His face was as red as a cooked lobster, and anyone could tell that he was really angry. "Well, let's go investigate first." A police sergeant sitting on the right side of the conference table raised his hand and said, but his expression was very reluctant. "The snitch that came and went without a trace. Who can catch this? Moreover, there are no clues at all, and the director refuses to say how many things were lost or how much money was lost, and they're not allowed to check the scene. What are they trying to catch? Then go." Upon hearing this, the policemen in the conference room all walked out, as if they had been granted amnesty. Niji, who was sitting behind the end of the conference table, was the first to slip out. The first thing I did was to find a copy of that day's Gotham newspaper, and then I squatted on the ground and read it attentively. The front page news of Gotham Daily is very exciting. The president of Wayne Group, Mr. Bruce Wayne, has officially returned to the core of the group and will give a speech tonight. On the front page of the entire newspaper, there was only a large photo of Bruce Wayne, wearing a well-tailored handmade suit, a sparkling diamond watch on his wrist, and a cynical smile with a beautiful woman beside him. No matter how you look at it, he is an enviable playboy, and there is a constant stream of gossip news about celebrity models and beauties. But Niji knows very well that under Bruce Wayne's frivolous appearance, in order to maintain the best condition, he has been maintaining an ascetic life, and the wine and beauty are just an act. Of course, Niji is also very happy, because the information in this newspaper is obvious enough. This is in the main Batman universe, not those terrifying multi-universe. Although he doesn't know much about DC's multi-universe, he still knows about the Laughing Bat. Batman, who was infected with the Joker virus, had this as the wallpaper on his phone before traveling through time. There is not much other information in the newspaper, but it is basically certain that this is the time when Bruce Wayne has finished traveling and practicing in various countries and has not yet become Batman. In this case, you don't have to worry too much. Niji murmured to himself that in the early days of Batman, there were not many supervillains who could destroy the world. To be honest, my first thought when I found myself in Gotham was to moisten my feet and run to the metropolis where Superman is sheltered, or to Central City where the Flash is. Niji stood up and looked at the young face reflected in the glass window. He still had black hair, yellow skin, and a tough face that was a little handsome. I have traveled through time. Are there any cheats? Niji squinted his eyes and rubbed his chin, shouting in his heart. Come out, Tongsy. It's you. Ding. The adventure treasure has been refreshed. Please explore by yourself. FK. It's true. Meow Fong shouted in surprise. Before he could finish being surprised, Jerry Cab's son, who was coming from behind, came over, grabbed his shoulder, and said in a low voice full of excitement, I know who stole the director's house. Niji was stunned when he heard this. He really knew something about this matter. If Gotham were to talk about the thief who came and went without a trace, excluding Mr. Bruce, the Batman, there would only be Catwoman, right? But Jerry Cab's son didn't care about Niji's expression and just whispered, as long as we solve the case, we can become official police officers, and the chief also said that whoever catches the criminal can be promoted to sergeant. When Niji heard this, he understood why Jerry was so excited. The temptation to directly turn into a formal police officer was too tempting for trainee police officers like them. They are now worse than temporary workers. They rely on their legs to go out. Their monthly salary is not as good as that of a dog. It is really not as good as a dog. The police dog carbine of the Arkham Division earns more than them every month. Do you know who it is? Niji asked in a deep voice. Jerry nodded seriously. What a waste of waiting, let's go. Niji walked straight out, researching what the adventure treasure was as he walked. Chapter 2, Arkham. After coming out of Arkham Precinct, the first thing you can see is the gray sky. There is always little blue sky in Gotham City. There is no glamorous scene in the bustling urban area around. It is the worst place in Gotham City's Arkham District. The old sewage plant is in operation. Sewage is churning in the rusty steel pipes, and the towering chimneys of the dilapidated chemical plants are releasing acrid white smoke into the sky. The streets are littered with black plastic bags containing domestic garbage. Depression and backwardness are synonymous with this place. After all, this is Arkham, a concentration camp for those mentally ill lunatics. There are few sane people who would be willing to live next to a mental hospital. Niji and Jerry Cab's son, wearing black police uniforms and police hats, walked along the road with their hands in their pockets. It is late autumn now, and the withered yellow leaves on the roadside are blown everywhere by the wind, and the seedlings are blowing their breath and looking around. Although in movies and comics, Gotham City looks very technologically advanced. It is set in the Great Depression era. Mumu, what are you looking at? What else is interesting to see in this place? Jerry took a breath and asked in confusion. Since just now, Niji has been walking around and looking around, as if he was looking for something. Niji, who was walking in front, rolled his eyes when he heard this. Could he say that this was his first time here, and he was very curious? But Moo is indeed his nickname. This guy Jerry is from the same area as himself. They are both gangsters from the Lower East Side and best friends. Turning to look at him, Niji smiled teasingly and said, "You said you know who did it. So where should we catch him?" As he spoke, Niji reached out and tugged on the leather holster on his belt. Inside was a Colt Law Enforcer pistol with 6 bullets and a 9mm caliber. The firepower is slightly inferior, but it is standard equipment for the police in this era, and the only thing they're missing from official police is an official police badge. Jerry stopped, looked around cautiously, and quickly waved to Niji to come over, and Niji took 2 steps forward. Although there are not even birds on this street, there should still be a sense of ceremony. If it is not mysterious, how can it be considered secret? Listen to me. Do you remember that guy we met in the Lower East Side apartment? Jerry said excitedly, staring at his light blue eyes, as if he was waiting for Niji to ask. Who is it? Niji asked cooperatively. He really couldn't remember who it was. Oswald. That guy is now a button man under the Romans. You can definitely get the news by asking him. Roman. When Niji heard this, he seemed to think of something. The name Roman is not common in Gotham City. This name represents the top of Gotham's underworld, Carmine Falcone. Although he can only be regarded as a second-rate villain in the comics, in the early days of Gotham City, he was definitely the top boss, and the Roman Empire he built by himself was even more glorious. The kind of arrogance that his button men can walk directly into the police station, shoot the witness, and walk away. Button men are the names of their thugs. FK, is it reliable? Don't trick us. It's not easy to get this skin. Miyamu tugged on the police uniform jacket with some worry. The two of them had neither money nor power. Instead of working as thugs and gangs, they entered the police station and became trainee police officers. The feeling was not ordinary and unspeakable. That's why Jerry was so excited when he heard that he could become a formal police officer, and if he caught the prisoner, he could be directly promoted to sergeant. For them, that was a shortcut to success. It's no problem. Don't forget that we rescued him, and I carried him back. There will be no problem in asking him for help. Jerry slapped his chest and grinned, saying that when they lived in the Lower East Side, they had a lot of fights, especially Niji, with his yellow skin and black hair causing a lot of trouble. However, the two of them are also very good at fighting. If they hadn't seen too many violent gang deaths, they might be thugs under the Romans now. Okay, but it's quite far from the Lower East Side. Shall we take the rail train? Miyamu turned to look at the iron bridge in the distance. More than 10 minutes later, on the subway in Gotham City, Niji sat on a chair and looked at the graffiti on the subway window. Jerry stood beside him looking at his hands, because the winner was determined by guessing at one position. He lost, and he was a little unwilling to lose, but it was not very far from the Lower East Side, and he could get there in a short while. There were many people in the carriage, but when they saw the black police uniforms they were wearing, they all crowded aside and did not dare to get close. In Gotham, the police and those gang thugs are basically equal. Sometimes it is worse to fall into the hands of the police, but there are not many shootings. Since the death of the good man Wayne and his wife in Sin Alley, gun control is still relatively strict, mainly because the flow of arms has been controlled by the Romans. Niji leaned on the chair and looked out the window, but in his mind he was thinking about the gold finger he had obtained. The adventure treasure has been refreshed. Please explore by yourself. Apart from this sentence, there is nothing, no hint, and no response. However, Niji still deduced some information from it. This gold finger is most likely to be something similar to a treasure hunt. But it's up to you to find it for what. Niji looked outside at Gotham City. After leaving Arkham District, you could see the city, but the sky was still not very clear, and it looked like it was going to rain. Think about it carefully, except for Batman, a super rich man who spent a lot of money to develop high-tech equipment. Gotham is really awesome. It has everything: magic, mutation, technology, and even martial arts. Just when Niji was thinking about the future, the train stopped. Jerry relied on his strong body to squeeze out of the car door first, and Niji followed closely behind. The Lower East Side had already arrived. However, it started to rain lightly in the sky, hitting the platform. Niji raised his hand and flicked the police hat on his head, and the two walked towards the slum apartments in the Lower East Side in the rain. Because it was raining, pedestrians on the street were coming and going in a hurry, but there was a little bit of freshness. As the surrounding environment became more and more familiar, Jerry pinched his nose with emotion. Niji raised her hand and patted his broad back. This guy was about the same height as himself, but the width of his body made him look very tall and strong. The surrounding apartment buildings are becoming more and more dilapidated, especially after being soaked by the rain. The people squatting under the awning by the wall to take shelter from the rain stared at the two of them like a group of hyenas on the grassland, their eyes full of hostility and indifferent rejection. Chapter 3 Ah. As soon as they arrived at an apartment building here, Niji and the others heard a burst of screams and the sound of skin and flesh being torn open. Niji and Jerry looked at each other, then put their hands on the holster of their belt, using their thumbs to open the safety, ready to draw the gun at any time. Hey, why are you back? A figure holding a black umbrella walked over from the other side of the apartment building. He was short and thin, wearing a white vest, black trousers, and a conspicuous hooked nose on his face. Jerry breathed a sigh of relief when he saw him, turned off the safety of the revolver, and tugged on his coat. It was raining heavily, and their police uniforms and coats were already wet, and Meow Moo also recognized them. The guy holding an umbrella in front is the Oswald they're looking for. The guy has a big smile on his face. Jerry followed him and hugged him hard. Oswald hit Jerry's chest with his hand. I'm so happy to see you. Are you really a pawn? Oswald smiled and waved to Niji. Moo Moo, you're still the same. Give me a hug. Come on, are your legs healed? Niji put the gun back into its holster and walked over. They are quite familiar with each other. The house where Oswald lives now is where Niji and the others live. A few years ago, Oswald was retaliated against and had one of his legs broken. He fainted on the road outside the small hospital. Jerry and Niji, who had just finished fighting, also supported each other and walked towards the small hospital. Save him once. Come on, come in, take a look at my mansion. Oswald smiled and pushed open the door, gathered his umbrella and hung it at the door, and walked inside. Niji and the others also took off their wet coats and hats and walked in. The inside of the house was still the same as it was before, and the floorboards were still warped and creaked when they stepped on them. There's a new oil painting hanging on the wall. It is well framed and magnificent, and it is incompatible with the shabby appearance of the surroundings. Panini was an Italian painter in the 17th century. Panini's Interior of the Pantheon in Rome is obviously an imitation, but it is very beautiful. Tell me, why do you have time to come to my place? Oswald took a white shirt and put it on, with some wet hair sticking to his forehead, making his nose look bigger. Ahem, that. Jerry was a little embarrassed and didn't know what to say. Niji, who was next to him, saw this scene and spoke directly. We're here for a snitch. Our director Wei Fei's house was robbed last night. This is not a tantrum. We want to know if you have any clues. Just like a snitch steals something, he has to sell it. Hearing this, Oswald raised his hand to block it, and the smile on his face disappeared. Are you here to be my spy? Yes. Niji was also a little embarrassed. The sky outside is getting darker and gloomier. With the windows closed, the air in the room is not circulating and feels stuffy, making people very uncomfortable. Oswald's face was gloomy, and he looked at the raised floor. A cockroach ran out from below and was trampled to death by Jerry. As you know, we cannot follow the same path as the police, let alone provide help. This will make us lose our dignity. Hearing this, Niji wanted to say something, but Oswald raised his hand to stop him. He continued, but the friendship between us is more than anything else. I can only provide you with a few clues. I can't say anything else. Niji nodded quickly. It was much better to have such a local snake help than them looking for help blindly. If you go to this address, don't say I asked you to go. Oswald searched in his pocket and took out a business card, FISO grocery store, from his wallet. The address was also on the Upper East Side, but closer to the garbage mountain. Thanks. Niji took the business card and thanked him. When did you become so polite? Next time I invite you to dinner, I will give you an umbrella at the door. Oswald smiled, raised his hand, and beat Niji's chest, and Jerry waved to him with a smile on his face. After the two walked out, Oswald turned to look at the painting interior of the Roman Pantheon, hanging on the wall. I'll get to the top one day, I promise. Jerry came down from the apartment building and put on a police hat with a happy look on his face. He seemed to have seen the day when they became official police officers. Niji took the black umbrella and unfolded it all at once, and the raindrops from the sky fell on it. Are you really holding it? Jerry smiled and leaned under the umbrella. He gave them all. I don't want to be embarrassed. Niji smiled and handed the umbrella to Jerry and asked him to hold it. However, when he looked up at the umbrella, Niji was still suspicious. Oswald, why does he seem so familiar, hiss? Niji seemed to have thought of something, turned his head and looked behind him. Oswald, who was standing at the window, waved his hand. Well, it probably has the same name. It can't be that penguin, and it's not that fat. Niji smiled and shook his head. What are you saying? Jerry picked his nose and asked curiously. I'm talking about, what should we do if we can't defeat the snitch? Jerry stopped talking, and Meowmoo shook his head and walked towards the garbage mountain. It wasn't just the title, but there was a real garbage mountain over there. A neighborhood that was burned down due to a fire has become a dumping ground because it has not been rebuilt. Some gangs also threw corpses there, resulting in a bunch of wild dogs and coyotes eating dead man's flesh. When approaching there, Niji suddenly felt something, but it was unclear, and the silent gold finger also moved. Ding! Encounter hidden treasures. Discover obtainable items. Niji stopped and looked around, looking at the looming garbage mountain. Because of the rain, there was a layer of mist. What's wrong? Jerry asked. You go to Fiso grocery store first. I have something to do. Niji gave Jerry the business card in his pocket and ran towards the place where he felt, with an expectant smile on his face. Hey, umbrella. Jerry looked at the seedlings running out and then looked at the business card in his hand. For a moment, he didn't know what was going on with this guy. Before the garbage mountain even got close, Meowmoo could smell a rotting stench, which was definitely not the stench of garbage. Raising his arms to cover his nose, Niji quickly took off his coat, put it on his back, tied the two sleeves around his face like a mask, and walked over there. The holster on his belt was open, and Meowmoo looked around cautiously. As he got closer, the stench became stronger. From the garbage dump, as high as 3 stories, smoke caused by the chemical reaction caused by the rain was rising. Niji walked over there and looked at the garbage scattered on the ground. He also saw a pile of discarded needles. Oh, a mixed-haired wild dog bared its teeth and roared from its throat. It stared at the seedlings with red eyes, warning him not to come near. Niji took out the revolver from the holster and looked around to make sure that no one from the small animal organization would come to cause trouble. Just one shot at a wild dog. Bang! The gunshot was very crisp. The wild dog that had been shot screamed and ran away, disappearing in the blink of an eye, leaving only a few drops of blood on the ground. Chapter 4: The Eye of True Seeing. Bah! Dogs look down on people. Seeing the wild dogs running away, Niji let out a disdainful sound, put the pistol back into its holster, and started walking around. The feeling in my heart became clearer and clearer. It was right here. But after walking around twice, he didn't see any trace. Niji poked the ground with a stick he picked up. After thinking for a moment, he picked up the garbage with a stick and spread it everywhere. The stench came directly to his face. Draft the fake squid. Niji was so stimulated by the smell that she burst into tears, but the feeling in her heart became clearer. That thing was down here. I can't bear it. Niji gritted his teeth and roared, held his breath, and started digging around with a stick, knocking over the top layer of garbage and turning the bottom layer of garbage into mud. When the stick was poked, the bag split open and flowed out like rotten mud. The seedling stirred hard, and the stick hit something. Found it. Niji squatted down quickly, not caring about the stench, and reached out to grab it. He picked up a metal object, which was pointed. The 6 sharp corners looked like a coin. As soon as he got this thing, Niji immediately understood what it was, and Goldfinger also introduced it. Eye of True Sight, a magic item, an investigative accessory made by a mystical wizard. After use, it has all the surrounding vision. It lasts for 5 minutes and will be restored after 1 day. Damn it. Niji squatted on the ground, feeling this wonderful feeling, just like the eye rolling in Naruto. Although his eyes were looking in front, he could still see what was going on behind him. Even without turning your head, you can see the situation on the left and right, even above your head and below your feet. And there are no side effects like dizziness. Niji pulled out the pistol and put it on his shoulder, pointing the muzzle behind him, and pulled the trigger without hesitation. Bang. Ouch. A scream sounded from behind. It was a gray coyote. It wanted a sneak attack from behind, but was hit by the shot. It ran a few steps crookedly and then fell to the ground. After a few struggles, it died. Niji whistled happily, shook off the dirty mud in his hands, got up and ran to a broken bag where a little rainwater had accumulated and rubbed it hard. The thing wrapped in black mud also had a golden luster and was a gold 6-pointed star pendant. Different from the traditional 6-pointed star, this is a 6-pointed star composed of 3 triangles, with an I logo spelled out in the middle, with incomprehensible runes and spells engraved on it. Good stuff, Niji shouted with a smile, and felt the situation of Goldfinger by the way. If there is no change, there may be a time limit, or it will only sound when a treasure is encountered. Never mind. Niji took the pendant and carefully washed it with rainwater. He also washed the mud on his arms, shook his hands, and ran towards the road. In Fiso's grocery store, Jerry Cabson was arguing with an old man with white hair, short stature, and a long-winded speech. I'm asking, has anyone come to sell anything to you? I don't know what you're talking about. I hate the police very much, especially the police who come to my place without buying anything. I hate them very much. The old man curled his lips, held a computer, and pressed a string of zeros plus, and then pressed equals 0. You are not cooperating with the police investigation. I have the right to arrest you. Jerry blushed and slapped the table. Catch me quickly. I need a good place to sleep on this rainy day. The police station is a very good place. The old man said in a low-key manner and put his hands on the table, as if he wanted to put handcuffs on me. Jerry's expression turned even worse. He didn't have handcuffs. To be precise, they only had a self-purchased police uniform and a law enforcement revolver, no handcuffs, and no arrest power. Meowmoo hurriedly ran in from outside, and the old man and Jerry's faces wrinkled for a moment. Oh, damn it, Chet. Did you fall into the sewer? Jerry pinched his nose and leaned against the wall with a frightened look on his face. The old man's face became even worse, and he was looking for something on the counter in a hurry. What are you afraid of? How can there be such a big stench? Niji walked inside as he spoke. The effect of the true seeing, I was still there. The grocery store was full of goods. There were boxes of everything. It also had an unpleasant moldy smell. However, Niji also discovered that with his ability, he could also see through things. To be precise, he could see what was inside the box. There was no light, and I couldn't see clearly, but I could clearly see inside the counter. The old man took 2 bottles of spray and was about to stand up. Niji reached out and picked up the umbrella Jerry placed next to the box and unfolded it before him. TSK. 2 sprays came out. All of it was sprayed on the umbrella. The old man looked at the black umbrella in front of him with a surprised look on his face. Kula put the umbrella away. Old man, our director's house was robbed. If you don't tell me who did it, I will tell him that it was you. Believe me, that BD of his will definitely put you in Arkham Asylum. Niji leaned on the counter, put down his umbrella, took out his pistol, and slapped it on the table with a rogue look on his face. I don't know if it was what Niji said was too scary, or the smell on his body was too scary, or maybe it was because of the pistol on the table. Anyway, the old man's expression changed again and again, and finally he hit the table with a rag, as if he was seeing the god of plague. Shat, I knew it would be bad if I met a cop. The old man gritted his teeth angrily and said, the voice sounding like it was squeezed out from the gap between his back molars. If he were 30 years younger, he must let these 2 cops know what it is to be afraid. A thick account book was slapped on the counter. The old man put on his reading glasses and looked at the rules on it. Niji and Jerry also came over and took a look. They couldn't understand it at all. They were all written in special codes. The old man snorted disdainfully, picked up the rotary phone on the side, dialed a phone number, leaned over and whispered a few words, hung up and dialed another number. A few minutes later, the old man took the account book back, patted the table, and said, "No one is selling goods, but there is a guy who asked about the price and has a batch of goods to sell." "That guy? Where?" Jerry asked quickly. The old man bit his lip, stood on the chair behind the counter, looked at the two people condescendingly, and gestured to the cabinet next to him with the corner of his mouth. "You want to get something without spending money?" "I'm Fake's mother." Wearing big pants and flip-flops, Niji stood naked in the rain and cursed angrily. That old man was so cruel that he didn't even plan to leave any clothes for them. If Oswald's umbrella hadn't been handed over to him, the two of them would have left naked. Jerry stretched out his hand to wipe the rain off his face, and a handful of chest hair on his chest were wet and stuck together. He looked at Niji with some resentment. "Didn't you also catch a chain?" Niji touched the gold six-pointed star pendant hanging around his neck and the python skin black rope, and frowned in embarrassment. "FK, we must catch that snitch. Otis, right? I remember who he is. Let's catch him." Saying that, Niji ran out in stride. "Wait for me. There are no strings in my pants." Jerry grabbed his pants and quickly raised his feet and chased forward. But seeing Niji's serious look, he also felt that there was some hope and certainty in this matter. He was an official police officer. Chapter 5 Rat Catcher Otis Flanagan. This name is a bit unfamiliar, but coupled with the characteristics of Mouse, Niji immediately remembered who he was, one of Gotham's supervillains, the Rat Catcher. The reason why he remembered him was because Otis was a villain who was born because of his unjust imprisonment, and it felt like the government was forcing the people to rebel. The security in Gotham has always been bad, just like the gloomy sky. It never seems to be better. Otis is a rat catcher under the Gotham Health Department. His main task is to catch rats on the streets, sewers, and residents' homes, and make a living from this. Once he encountered a fight on the street. Such things were common in Gotham and seemed to have nothing to do with an honest man like him. But someone died in that fight, and the police who rushed to the scene saw Otis next to the body. The evidence was conclusive. He was regarded as the murderer and was imprisoned in Blackgate Prison. 10 years. 10 years of unjust imprisonment is still the most dangerous Blackgate prison in Gotham. The current Blackgate prison is not the same existence as the villain sanatorium in the future. Prison escaping is easier than having a party. Otis, who was stimulated by the 10 years of imprisonment, believed that his hard work in cleaning up rats was in vain. The real threat to Gotham is human beings. With this realization, Blackgate Prison, the birthplace of evil, did not show any stinginess, allowing him to have the ability to communicate and control rats. Perhaps this was his destiny. After being released from prison, Otis launched his own revenge. He arrested the officials who had tried him and used rats to torture them both psychologically and physically. And this torture lasted 5 years. Niji picked up the glass bottle filled with gasoline and sealed the mouth of the bottle with tape and cloth. The gold six-pointed star hanging around his neck gradually swayed with his movements. Moo, can this trick really work? Next to him, Jerry Cabson was wearing a pair of worn-out sneakers and protective gear for football matches, with 2 metal baseball bats at his feet. "Don't worry. As long as you are responsible for fighting and leave the thinking to me, nothing will go wrong." Niji hung the packed glass bottle on his belt with a confident smile on his face. Ratcatcher Otis was not a bad guy with a lot of evil from the beginning, but he had a very good bottom line. He only arrested those officials who were involved in his case and did not implicate innocent people. However, many years later, he became a real supervillain because he stayed in the sewers with rats for a long time. He used rats to spread the plague in Gotham City. After being defeated by Batman, he was imprisoned in Blackgate Prison again. At the D'Angelo wastewater treatment plant, rusty pipes lie on the ground like dead trees, and huge amounts of sewer entrances are a gathering place for homeless people. It rained heavily yesterday, but it has stopped now. Many homeless people ran out of their doghouse-like homes and gathered around a gasoline barrel, burning wood, rubber, and paper to keep warm and dry their damp clothes. A cold wind blew through in the late autumn, making the frozen people shiver. A homeless man in a worn-out coat, with his skinny rib-like chest exposed, leaned against the barrel to warm himself. His light blonde hair looked a little messy, with some mud spots stuck to it. His thin face had a pair of evasive eyes, and he wore a pair of dirty leather gloves on his hands. Just as a group of homeless people gathered to warm themselves by the fire, two men wearing black balaclavas and carrying baseball bats came over. The homeless people looked at the two of them with fearful eyes, especially the man who was wearing rugby armor and looked particularly burly, with only two eyes exposed in the hood, like a robber going to rob a bank. Otis. Which of you is called Otis? Niji held a lighter with gloves on and glanced at these homeless people. The location of a news they got at Fiso's grocery store yesterday was here. The guy was 100% there. Those homeless people looked at me, and I looked at you without saying anything. They had almost forgotten their own names, let alone other people's names. If anyone knows him, I will give him this. Niji took out a piece of butter bread from his arms that he had just bought on the road with the little money they had, opened the package, and waved it in front of these homeless people. The sound of swallowing was like a toad by the pond. Everyone's eyes turned over. If it weren't for fear of being beaten, they would have come to snatch it away. Gigi. A mouse pokes its head out of a homeless man's pocket, seemingly smelling the scent of brioche bread, with an anthropomorphic, drooling expression on its face. Mouse. Niji looked over immediately. It was a man with light blonde hair, bent over and wearing a shabby coat. His eyes were averted, and it was obvious that he had something on his mind. Otis Flanagan. Niji suddenly shouted loudly, and Otis was so frightened that he ran away. His running was a direct confirmation. Chase. Niji threw the butter bread away and chased after them. Jerry looked at the direction they were running with a baseball bat on his shoulder and quickly ran in the other direction to block them. Those homeless people looked at the butter buns flying in the air and quickly reached out to grab them. The butter buns drew an arc in the air and were about to fall to the muddy ground. One hand caught the fallen butter cake. The tramps fell into a ball and struggled forward to grab the cream cake. But you pulled me, and I pulled you. And they didn't even get closer even after they were in a ball. The man holding the cream cake was wearing a uniform from Ace Chemical Plant and a thick mask on his face. He was very happy looking at the cream cake in his hand. Jenny will definitely like this. She likes cakes best. Looking at the homeless people huddled together, the man smiled and said, "Okay, gentlemen, have a laugh. Why are you so serious?" The next second, the homeless people all looked at him. Oh, that's not good. The man immediately turned around and ran away, not forgetting to take out a plastic bag from his pocket and wrap the cream cake. Stop. Otis, I have something to say. Niji kept chasing him all the way. Otis, who was running in front, was obviously not as strong as him, and the distance between them became shorter and shorter. Otis gasped and looked at the sewer entrance not far away. The iron fence above had been removed. He could get rid of this guy behind him as long as he ran, wherever he ran. The sewer is his home. Even if there is no place in the world that can accommodate him, the sewer will still look the same and will not change in the slightest. Shit. Stop. Jerry, who was outflanking from the right, held two baseball bats in his hands like drum hammers, crossing them and hitting them together, making a harsh metallic sound. Otis looked at Jerry, who was blocking the road in front, and the seedlings that were chasing after him. There was no way forward or backward, and it was impossible to escape. He suddenly raised his hands and clasped them together, with a hint of unwillingness and ferocity on his face. You asked for this. Chapter 6. Otis. After seeing Otis folding his hands, Niji quickly stopped and looked left and right. Sure enough, the piles of garbage and debris around him began to shake. The big gray rats ran out from under the wet cardboard one by one. They were in groups of more than a dozen, and the black mass moving on the ground was creepy. Niji pulled out a homemade gasoline bottle from his waist, used a lighter to light the soaked cloth at the mouth of the bottle, and threw it to the ground. Boom, boom! The glass bottle shattered, and the flames immediately started burning. Where the gasoline flowed, the flames began to spread. Niji took out another bottle and lit it, then smashed it on the right, blocking the left and right areas, and rushed directly towards Otis himself. Otis looked at the sudden flames and was a little surprised. Niji rushed up and kicked him sideways. Otis quickly raised his hand to block, but his thin body could not block the kick at all. Otis was knocked to the ground directly by the kick, but he immediately stood up again, raised his fist, and struck forward. Niji bent down and dived down and immediately hugged Otis's lower back with both hands. He picked up Otis and threw him to the ground. The fighting skills he had learned in his previous life, as well as the street fighting style in this life, Niji was not timid at all in close combat. He and Jerry relied on their ability to become trainee police officers. Ah! Otis lay on the ground and gritted his teeth and let out a cry of pain. He put his hand to his lips and blew a low whistle. The mice who were frightened by the flames immediately became impatient, and many mice rushed directly into the flames and burned into fireballs. The squeaking sound is a little scary. The two baseball bats in Jerry's hand, which were blocking the sewer entrance, flew through the air and hit the ground hard, causing blood to splash everywhere. Swarms of rats ran out of the sewer like a black furry wave. Jerry was so scared that he burst into tears. That kind of terror really destroyed people's psychological defenses. Shut up. Niji grabbed Otis's hand and pressed his head with the other hand. On that haggard face, those evasive eyes were now filled with desperate hatred and anger. Otis, you are wrong, Niji shouted loudly. You didn't kill anyone. You didn't participate in that fight, and you didn't commit a crime. It was the charges imposed on you by those bastards. You were wronged. You are innocent. Otis's eyes were full of anger. He was stunned for a moment after hearing Niji's words. What did he hear? Was he wronged? Is he innocent? He didn't kill anyone? Otis, I know what happened to you. You didn't kill anyone. You were wrong. Niji continued to shout. A tear slipped from the corner of Otis's eye, and the anger in his eyes was drowned by this tear. He closed his eyes in pain and cried like a child. 10 years. 10 years. He cried out that he was wronged countless times, and everyone said that he was guilty and that he committed murder. But he was not. No. The grievance and pain that had been accumulated for a long time burst out all of a sudden. He cried bitterly like a child who had been wronged, but no one believed him. And he got the final answer. The rats gathering in groups suddenly stopped, and the impatience that had just spread disappeared. Jerry stood at the entrance of the sewer, holding onto a baseball bat covered in blood, his legs trembling uncontrollably, and his face as pale as a drowned corpse. The sewer in front of him seemed to be filled with all the rats in Gotham. The dense presence of thousands of them made him feel panic and fear in his heart. The mice gradually retreated, and the mice that originally gathered here also retreated, just like a beach at low tide. Only the rat that was smashed into mud under the baseball bat, the blood spattered on the ground, and the dozen or so rat balls that were burned into black charcoal told the story of the horrific scene just now. Seeing the rat catcher Otis curled up in a ball and crying on the ground, Niji trembled in his heart and almost sat down on the ground. He still underestimated the world. Niji turned his head and looked at the mess around him. If the cannon had not worked, he and Jerry might have become food for rats now. But it's impossible that it won't work. Niji looked down at Otis. He was a pitiful man. Who would say a word for him? It was just a sentence of innocence and injustice. No one had said a word for him for 10 years, but this sentence was enough. This FG world. Niji shook his head, reached out to touch a cigarette, and then remembered that they had become paupers. Yesterday, when I was buying information at the FISO grocery store, the police uniforms, police guns, and even my underwear were all covered up. Oswald's umbrella was also covered up by them. It's really embarrassing when you think about it. Fortunately, the person was found. Niji looked at Otis. Arresting someone? Forget it. Meow Moo is not that hard-hearted yet. He just needs 2 pieces of property to prove it. Anyway, the director didn't say what was missing from his house. Be careful here. In the sewers of Gotham City, Otis walked in front holding a lantern, and Niji and Jerry walked behind. Jerry was already frightened into a muggle, and the name of the strongest man in the rat world was blinded in vain. Niji looked at the wide sewer, the platforms on both sides, and the sewage rolling in the middle ditch. The sewers of Gotham City are a veritable underground maze. With its multi-layered structure and waterway system extending in all directions, it is difficult to find the way even with a map. But this is not complicated for Rat Catcher Otis. The ability to communicate with rats makes him almost unhindered here. At the corner of a sewer, A large hole was dug out of the thick brick wall, and a pile of things was covered with rags inside. Otis hung the lantern in his hand on a steel hook above. "This is it. Everything I stole from anywhere is here." Otis was a little ashamed when he spoke, but after serving his sentence in Blackgate Prison, he really had nowhere to go. Gotham has changed a lot in the past 10 years, and he is penniless and has difficulty eating. In this homeless gathering place, he survives by picking up trash and with the help of rats. "I understand, but you don't have to worry about it." Niji patted Otis on the shoulder with understanding. In Gotham these days, there is no low-level rescue organization run by Mr. Bruce, who distributes money, food, clothes, and jobs to these homeless people. They're the last knights in the darkness of Gotham. Niji sighed with some emotion and squeezed Otis's shoulder hard. Under the thin coat was a skinny body. Although his shoulder hurt a little, Otis didn't say anything. Some people believed that he was innocent and innocent. He was already very happy. "Here's this for you. It's autumn, so dress warmly." Niji took off the same shabby coat and put it on Otis. Although it was a little shabby, it was very thick and much better than the one Otis was wearing now. "Thank you," Otis said with a choked voice. This was the first time he felt kindness from others. The rags on the pile of things were pulled away, and under the light of the lantern, the pile of belongings looked resplendent. There were boxes inlaid with gems, gold coins wrapped in cloth, valuable oil paintings, and an open safe containing dozens of wads of banknotes, 2 gold bricks, and a dozen expensive antiques. "Chet, how much the hell is this worth?" Jerry, who was silent because of fear, his eyes widened when he saw this scene. The most money he had seen since he was born in a slum was the banknotes in the bank counter. Niji looked at this pile of things and felt very uncomfortable in his heart. They said that Gotham's police force was corrupt, and this was the reality. You could take whatever you want. I originally wanted to teach that guy a lesson, but he had so many good things in his house. I emptied them out for him when I got excited. I must have committed a crime. Otis said, a little depressed. "No, you're robbing the rich and giving to the poor. You are a good man." Niji shook his head, and then remembered that Otis and the others might not understand this meaning. So he changed his words. "Robin Hood, rogue, justice. Now you understand. If you give this money to that BD, he will just spend his time in alcohol, so you might as well give it to someone else." Robin Hood. Otis blinked, as if he didn't expect that he could be called such a person. Everyone could be a hero, and so can you. Niji grinned. Chapter 7 Police Niji came out of the sewer holding a box. The light outside made him uncomfortable, so he raised his hand to block it. Although the sun cannot be seen in the clouds covering Gotham, the dazzling feeling is still very unpleasant. "Otis!" Niji turned around and shouted, and Otis, who was standing in the shadow of the sewer entrance, looked up. "If you want revenge, just say hello to me. Many of those guys have retired. It's still very troublesome for you to find them. I believe there is fairness and justice in the world, and I believe there are heroes who stand up for justice. But I believe even more in using my own hands to seek justice." Niji threw the box to Jerry, raised his hands, and gestured. "We are all hopeless guys sinking into this world, aren't we?" Hearing this, Otis laughed. His face full of sadness and wrinkles made him look at least 10 years older. "Thanks. Bye-bye. Take care of yourself." Jerry smiled and waved his hand. This guy who could summon mice really impressed him, but he didn't hate it. Correct. Niji remembered something, took it out of his pocket, and found a business card that was soaked in water and wrinkled. This is the business card of Fiso Grocery Store. It's located near the Garbage Mountain in the Upper East Side. I think that old man is not simple. If you want to ship goods, go find him. Be careful that the old man slanders you." Otis took the business card solemnly, nodded and said, "I understand. Thank you." He said and bowed heavily. "No need to say thank you. Let's go. Take care of yourself." Niji patted him on the shoulder, smiled, waved, and left with Jerry. Otis stood in the shadow of the sewer and watched them leave until they could no longer be seen. "Are we friends?" Otis raised his sleeve to wipe his tears, looked at where they left, tugged on his coat, and sniffed. A big light brown mouse climbed onto his shoulder and touched him with its small paws, as if to comfort him. "Bastion, they're good people, right?" "Gigi. Yeah, if you're not a good person who would want to be friends with a homeless man in the sewers. Gigi, Robin Hood. Can a man like me be worthy of such a title? Otis picked up the business card in his hand, looked up at the bright sky, turned around, and walked into the dark sewer. Arkham Police Chief Weaver was sitting on a chair, looking at the smashed gem box on his desk that was full of scars, and the gems on it had been deducted. There was also a stack of account books inside, which were wet and exuded a pungent odor, as if they had been fished out of the sewer. Putting his hand in front of his nose, Wei Fei looked up at the two young trainee police officers standing in front of them. Their noses were bruised, and their faces were swollen, and their bodies were smelly, which made him frown. Where did you find this thing? Niji quickly took a step forward, with water dripping from his messy hair, with a serious look on his face. We found it at the wastewater ditch behind Arkham Asylum. Wei Fei raised his eyebrows, looked at Miao Mu's Chinese face, and then looked at Jerry, who had a dark eye socket behind him. What happened to the injury on your face? Well, we were besieged by a gang of gangsters, and they were sharing the stolen goods over there. According to our investigation, they stole through the sewers and then evacuated along the sewers. This box. I see. Wei Fei didn't ask any more questions, but just pinched his nose hard, obviously disgusted by the stench of Miao Mu and the others. Okay, you can go out. Wei Fei waved his hand. Niji and Jerry looked at each other without moving even a step. Wei Fei frowned. Is there anything else? That you said, Jerry said with a naive smile. Oh, you're still trainee police officers. Go to the logistics department and ask Kit to register you. Get out. Wei Fei waved his hands in disgust. The smell almost made him vomit. Well, our police uniforms and police guns were also. Let's get the logistics together. Get out. Wei Fei shouted angrily, stood up from the chair, and Niji and the others ran out quickly. Weaver looked at the account books and documents that were soaked in water and flipped through a few pages. Yes, they were the accounts submitted by the gangs in Arkham District, but they were too stinky. He threw down the account book and ran to the bathroom to wash his hands. Niji and Jerry outside were already laughing like crazy, raising their hands and high-fiving each other in perfect coordination. While in the sewer, among the pile of things, Niji saw the documents in the safe at first glance. Countless experiences told him that things put together with money and gold are absolutely valuable. On the way back, the two of them took off the gems and kicked the box on the ground like a football, leaving scratches all over it. They soaked the documents in sewage and washed them. By the way, the two of them had a fight and came out looking embarrassed and having gone through a hard battle. Kit, the logistics manager of Arkham Police Station, watched Niji and the others walk in, pinching his nose with a look of disgust on his face. Chet, did you two go digging through the trash? It stinks. Don't come near me. Get out. Get out. We are here to get new police uniforms and police guns. The director asked us to come. Jerry shouted quickly. I know. Get out and wait. Jim swung a broom and shooed the two of them out of the warehouse like rats. With a bang, the iron door was closed. FK Squid. This greedy fat pig Jim. Jerry stood at the door of the warehouse, looking at the closed iron door, cursing unhappily, and the good mood of becoming an official police officer was gone. Niji was also very unhappy and leaned against the wall. This dog Jim managed the warehouse by himself and tormented them a lot when they first became interns. Their police uniforms and police guns were bought at twice the price. Half an hour later, Jim opened the iron door and threw out two old police uniforms like trash, as well as two police guns, which were still Colt Law Enforcer pistols without holsters. Miamu rushed over and kicked open the iron door. Jim, who was behind the door, did not expect to encounter such a thing. He was knocked out and fell to the ground on all fours, screaming like a pig. OMG! Jerry's eyes almost popped out of his head. How could his brother be so fierce? He just took action. Niji grabbed a Colt Law Enforcer revolver and walked in. You look down on me and try it. I drafted it. Jerry also quickly grabbed the pistol on the ground and followed him in, looking warily at the corridor outside. There was no one in the police station at this time, not to mention the logistics warehouse was still on the first floor of the police station. With a bang, Jerry closed the door. Chapter 8 Logistics Warehouse Kit, who fell to the ground, just got up and wanted to shout a few harsh words, but saw Niji coming over with a gun. His face turned pale instantly, and a layer of cold sweat was visible on his forehead. Damn it, Kit, you're tired of living. I've tolerated you for a long time. We worked our butts off outside. Why do you dislike us and give us half-used police uniforms? Niji held the revolver, turned on the safety, and used his thumb to pull the hammer away, with a ferocious look on his face. Kit was so frightened that he almost trembled. He didn't have the same momentum of shouting just now, and said in a trembling voice, "Misunderstanding, it's all misunderstanding. I'll get you new clothes, new clothes." He stood up. As a result, Niji slapped her face. Kit's clumsy body fell to the ground, covering her red face, and she almost cried out of grievance. I just want to ask two things. Niji opened the cylinder of the revolver, poured out all the bullets inside, picked up a bullet, and put it in. First, we brothers are trainee police officers. How much money do you make there? No. Kit was about to quibble. Niji put the revolver on his forehead, dropped the bullet held in his other hand on the ground, and sneered, "Russian roulette. You have 5 chances to survive. The first time, click, the trigger is pulled, short position." Ah! Kit screamed in fright. He was scared. He was really scared. This yellow-skinned boy who was inconspicuous in the police station really dared to pull the trigger. What if? I said, I earn half. Just $1,000. Really? I didn't earn the rest. Kit almost cried, and when Kit stood at the door, he immediately became angry when he heard this. At that time, in order to raise the money, they even sold their blood, ate only 1 meal a day, and still worked like cows and horses to this day. As a result, the grandson made half of the money. At that time, he also made things difficult for them and was extremely picky. Fake squid. Jerry gritted his teeth angrily, raised the revolver, pointed it at Jim, and pulled the trigger. The gun was empty. The bullets were all empty. Fake. There are no bullets in this, you. Jerry's lips trembled when he looked at the empty pistol. Niji quickly got up and pushed into the door to let him calm down. Compared to Niji's memory, Jerry had really experienced that kind of torment. Okay, second thing, why do you take our things away? Niji's voice was stern, and the revolver in his hand pressed hard on Kit's forehead, which made Kit cry in pain. No, it's an old rule. You can only take half of the things you bring when you come to the logistics department. If you have guns and no ammunition, the director specially told you to be more economical and take less things from the police station. What the hell are you doing? What nonsense rules don't work here? Just follow the rules. You know. Yes. Kat sweated profusely and agreed, not to mention doing things according to the regulations. Even if Niji asked him to clear the warehouse, he would have to do it. Okay, return the money you made from us before. Replace this gun and police uniform with new ones as required. Niji slapped the revolver hard on Kit. Kit nodded quickly, stood up, and went to rummage through the box to find something. Jerry stood by the wall and quietly turned around and gave Niji a thumbs up. Good job. Niji smiled and waved his hand, stood up, and looked at the logistics warehouse. Surrounded by iron cabinets for guns, large boxes for storing things, and a row of black bulletproof vests hanging on the wall. It has the Gotham Police Department's logo, GCPD, printed on it. Miyaoji walked over to see if he could get a body armor. Official police officers could apply for it. He walked over and stretched out his hand to touch Miaomu's face, and his expression suddenly changed. Is this bulletproof vest wrong? In his previous life, when he was in college in Chicago, he actually got a police-style bulletproof vest from the black market and wore it close to his body. It felt wrong, and there was something wrong with the bulletproof material inside. Niji reached out and pulled off a bulletproof vest and tore it off hard. Kit, who was rummaging through boxes to get a new police uniform, saw this scene and his heart almost stopped. He couldn't move around. With a bang, the bulletproof vest was torn open, and the bulletproof partition inside was an ordinary green plastic plate. There are still burrs on it that haven't been polished off. Not to mention bulletproof. This kind of thing can't even protect against children's air guns. Kit watched Niji raise his head, put down the body armor in his hand, and looked at him with murderous eyes. Do you have any conscience at all? You're risking the lives of our brothers. Why the hell do you want us to wear this and rush to the front line? Niji roared angrily and strode forward. Kit was so frightened that he knelt on the ground. It's not me. It was like this when I came here. Director Weaver did this, really. If you don't believe me, look at this. Kit quickly opened the cabinet drawer on one side. It said police shotgun, but the drawer was empty. It could be seen from the empty slot above that there were 2 shotguns with the same accessories and equipment inside. Niji stopped and looked at the other cabinets. Kit quickly ran over and opened all the cabinet doors and drawers. The police flash bombs were empty. The smoke grenades were empty. The tear gas canisters were empty. The rifle cabinets were empty, and there were no bullets left. The contents of the cabinet were 2/3 empty. Looking at the labels on the cabinet, there were other types of police guns. Glock, Beretta, and Smith were all good guns. As a result, only a few Colt Enforcer pistols were left. Really? Is there anything left in this police station? No wonder the Gotham police have such a crotch shape. Miyamu complained feebly that corruption is not terrible, but not doing things is the most terrible thing. This way Faye is really ABD. Well, here are 2 guns. You can use them. Kit forced a smile, took out 2 small suitcases from the police gun cabinet on one side, and placed them on the desk next to him. The box was small, as big as a book, and black. Kit quickly opened the box, and inside were 2 pistols. Niji could tell at a glance that this was a Glock 17, also with a 9mm caliber, but the standard ammunition capacity was 15 rounds per magazine. There's also an extended magazine with 19 rounds of ammunition, a quick loader, and a gun maintenance kit, which are not ordinary. Jerry was also attracted by the gun, which was much more powerful than the revolver in his hand. Niji picked up the gun and tried it. He opened the barrel and took a look. It was a brand new firearm, and the smell of factory gun oil had not dissipated. Can we use this thing? Niji asked hesitantly, looking at Kit. Kit quickly waved his hand. No, in fact, these guns were distributed by the General Administration, but they are gone. I kept these 2 guns privately. You will have no problem using them. Niji held the Glock 17, and it was impossible to put it down. He hesitated and said, "This gun is for us to borrow. I also took this gun. Is there any problem?" Niji picked up the Enforcer revolver on the side and gestured. Kit quickly said, "No problem. You're welcome." Chapter 9 Police car on top of a residential building in Arkham District. Niji and Jerry both held a bottle of beer and sat on the roof laughing. The sky was dark, but there was a soft light shining down. Downstairs, there are all kinds of life. The people who can live in Arkham District are not rich people, and some are simply stowaways. This place is the most chaotic and filthy. Even people from the slums of the Lower East Side shook their heads when they heard this, because the Arkham District is located on a triangular island surrounded by water on 3 sides, connected by several steel bridges. But once a problem occurs, those steel bridges will rise and turn this place into an isolated island. So it is also called Narrow Island. Momu, that's great. Jerry was holding a beer bottle and wearing a brand new police uniform with an excited look on his face. Niji just sat next to him and smiled. From the little gangsters in the slums to now, they have become prominent. Although they are only official police officers, they have broken that damn class and become normal people. The annual salary of ordinary police officers already starts at 40,000 yuan. With the police station's dividends and so on, under the current prices, they can feed and drink a family. He directly entered the middle and lower class status, and the benefits he could get from being a police officer were not ordinary. Miyamu picked up the beer bottle and took a sip into his mouth. He sat on the edge of the rooftop and looked down at the lights of thousands of houses below. Although the Arkham District is terrible, there are still many people living here, house after house, building upon building. No matter how bad the environment is, it cannot hinder people's survival. Those playful children downstairs got into trouble again, being chased and beaten by their parents, wailing and crying. Mumu, thank you very much. Without you, I wouldn't be where I am today. Jerry came over with a wine bottle and touched it with Niji, his eyes a little moist. Their best result in the slums would probably be the same as Oswald's. Perhaps even worse than him, he was at least a button-man thug in the Roman Empire and a small boss. They might just be corpses dumped in the garbage, eaten by wild dogs and coyotes, and left a stink on the ground. Having nothing in the slums except for their strength and strong physique. Coming to this place to be a trainee police officer is definitely the most risky thing they have ever done in their lives. Those difficult ups and downs and painful memories are really hard to believe that they really did it. It will be better in the future. Cheers. Niji smiled and touched him, poured beer into his mouth, drank happily, and put down the bottle. Niji stood up and shouted towards the sky. FG Gotham. I'm here. Just wait for the day when I become famous all over the world. Cheers. Jerry also roared and shouted. When the people downstairs heard the sound, they just shook their heads. It was another drunkard making a scene. Ding. The adventure treasure has been refreshed. Please explore by yourself. Goldfinger made a sound again, and Niji just laughed it off. If you encounter it, you will always find it. The next day, Arkham PD. Wearing new police uniforms, Niji and Jerry swaggered to the police station, proud and as arrogant as they wanted. Arkham Police Station is a 2-story office building. Some police officers looked surprised when they saw the two of them. They knew very well that these two guys, the lowest level characters in the police station, were people who could be manipulated by the police at will. Now, after a sudden change, he is on the same level as them? Isn't this change too fast? Nike. Jerry, your desks are here. You are temporarily following Chief Foyd. Is there anything else you can do? Deputy Director Leto Grunger pointed to the 2 desks at the back of the office, and the police chief in charge, Majid, already frowned a little. Yes. Niji and Jerry had already saluted and agreed. In the past, their jobs were in the corridor outside the office, where they worked as odd jobs and had to do any kind of work. Now there are tables to sit at. That would be nice. The two of them agreed, and even ran to the desk with some satisfaction, sitting on the chairs and playing with the things on the table. Someone is unhappy. The police chief in charge of this office, Majid, is very unhappy now. There are only 34 people in the Arkham Police Department, and they collect money from gangs in the Arkham District. Dividends are distributed according to the office every month. If there are 2 more people in the police station, he will pay dividends to 2 more people. And he still doesn't like these 2 people. Mumu, look here, what should I put? Do you want to raise a pot of cactus? Jerry touched the desk and whispered. Niji, sitting opposite, smiled and said, put 2 cups for drinking water. Okay, I don't care how you became a police officer, but here, I have the final say. Do you understand? As Majid said this, he walked over, holding a car key and throwing on the table. Now, disappear from my eyes and go on patrol. Niji reached for the car key. There was a license plate number on the pendant. He nodded and said, okay, we will listen to the sheriff's order. After saying that, he stood up and walked out. He was kicked out without even sitting on his warm buttocks. He felt that it must be something bad, but having a car to drive is another matter. Yeah, Jerry shouted excitedly. The police car flashed its lights, blared its siren, and played rock music in the car. Niji shook his head and held the steering wheel, driving the police car wildly on the road. There were no traffic police here anyway, so it was cool. The police car went all the way from Arkham Police Station to Arkham Asylum and circled Arkham District 4 times. On the way, Niji also saw Arkham Asylum, a classical spire building that looked like a castle sitting alone next to the cliff. It was also the highest place in the Arkham District, surrounded by a circle of high iron railings and electrified barbed wire. It is really a good place to escape. Mumu, where should we go next? Jerry sat in the passenger seat and circled the Arkham area 4 times before his excitement calmed down. Let's go to the FISO grocery store and sell this stuff. Niji reached into his pants and took out a small bag, which contained the gems that were buckled from a box. The largest one was as big as a fingernail and could be used as a ring. I went to the grocery store and picked up the police uniform and the umbrella. It has to be sent back to Oswald. Great! I can't wait to tell Oswald the good news that we are official police officers. Jerry unzipped his police uniform and took out the wallet with the police badge and the police ID photo on it. But the photo above had a silly smile. Forward, forward! Niji turned the steering wheel and turned the police car towards the bridge. Crossing the steel bridge, you can reach the Lower East Side. Chapter 10, Preparing for a Treat Boom. The bag containing the gems was thrown onto the counter. The little old man, standing at the counter, took off his reading glasses, wiped the lenses with a piece of cloth, and looked up at them. Let's see how much this thing can sell for. Niji leaned against the counter with a smile, raised his hand, and turned the stand lamp above, pointing the light towards the counter. The little old man picked up the bag and poured out the gems. Under the light, the cut surfaces of the gems reflected colorful colors. The little old man took out a single-cylinder magnifying glass from under the counter, looked at a ruby carefully, then threw it aside, then picked up another piece and looked at it. Handle it with care. This is a gem. Jerry, who was holding his arms next to him, shouted when he saw this scene. Another gem fell on the table, as if on purpose. The corner of Meow Moo's mouth twitched, and he gritted his teeth and said, I suspect that this is a place where stolen goods are sold, and I want to search you. The little old man looked up at him, hummed twice, and threw the gem in his hand on the table again. Do you know the difference between gems and glass? Are you using things to fool people? X2, what did you say? Niji asked quickly. The little old man picked up a gemstone and said, This is fake. If I'm not mistaken, this thing should be some decorations. Such a big ruby. TSK, 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 you dare to think so? That is all false? Jerry asked with a trembling voice. That's not true. This is a real gem and can be worth some money. The little old man picked up a light blue gem, shined it under the light, nodded in confirmation, swept the other gems into the bag, and threw them back to Niji. I'll just accept this one and use the others to entertain the children. Maybe I can also fool two silly girls with big breasts and no brains. Having said this, the little old man smiled slightly obscenely, and it seemed that he was not a good bird when he was young. How much? Niji asked, holding the bag. A wad of banknotes was thrown out from the counter. The little old man took the sapphire and said, Since you introduced me to a big customer, I will buy it for you at the original price this time. Police, Mr. Hearing this, Mr. Niji and the others smiled. It sounded so comfortable. Grabbing the bills on the counter, Niji looked at Franklin's old face above, counted out 3 bills, and slapped them on the table. Please return to us all the things we packed here before, including the umbrella. In the box at the door, go get it yourself. The little old man waved his hand and was about to see the guest off. Jerry had already run out and found their clothes in a broken wooden box and the umbrella in the bucket. Niji kept glancing around, but unfortunately, he had no reaction to the feeling in his heart before. I walked around the Arkham area 4 times, but I still didn't get any hints about the treasure. It seems that this thing really needs a little bit of fate. Oh, Moo, your police uniform is getting hairy. Jerry was carrying the seedling's police uniform. White mold had already grown on it. It was already damp, and if you cover it like this, mushrooms might grow in a few days. Okay, let's go have some fun. Niji took the wad of banknotes in his hand and shook them vigorously. There were several $1,000s in them, so there was absolutely no problem in using them for fun. Where to go? Jerry asked quickly. He originally had a noisy personality, but he was very poor and had no chance to play due to his busy work schedule. Let's go to the Zeus Hotel. Let's experience the feeling of being a master tonight, which can be considered a celebration. Niji grinned. The Zeus Hotel is also the most famous existence in Gotham City, and it is also one of the famous landmark buildings, second only to the Wayne Tower of the Wayne Group. It is also a place that everyone longs for. For some people, being able to have a meal there can show off for a lifetime. By the way, you invite Oswald. We owe him a favor. I'll call Otis. Is there anyone else? Sitting in the police car, Niji had already made arrangements. Jerry thought carefully and shook his head. They didn't have many friends to begin with, and these were the only people they could talk to. Okay then, let's go buy a suit. If you want to buy a suit you like, I'll go find Otis at the Zeus Hotel at 7 o'clock in the evening. Niji took out half of the banknotes and handed them to Jerry. Jerry grinned and said, See you there. The police car, siren blaring, drove rampantly through the Lower East Side. Some people wandering on the road were frightened and ran away when they heard the sound of the police car. I'll pick you up tonight. Niji shouted from the car. Jerry carried 2 suits, waved his hand, and shouted, No, if you have any connections, find 2 girls to have fun with. Go away. Niji cursed with a smile and drove away. There were 2 suits thrown in the back seat of the car. Niji took out a box of mint-flavored thin cigars cool from his arms, lit it with a lighter, held the steering wheel while smoking, and drove in the direction of Arkham District. The D'Angelo sewage treatment plant, where Ratcatcher Otis is located, is actually also in the Arkham District, and it's close to the Gotham River. The police car with the music playing stopped at the place where the homeless people had gathered. Some homeless people who were still sleeping on the ground turned their heads when they heard the music. The car door opened, and Niji got out of the car carrying his suit in a box and raised his hand to put on a pair of sunglasses. Today is different from the past. This feeling is really addictive. Niji walked toward the sewer, looking at the homeless people around him along the way. There were a lot less people. There are several thick sewage pipes inserted into the sewer entrance. There used to be iron railings outside, but they're gone now. A big rat ran out of the sewer. Its fur was light brown, and it looked different from those rats. Bastion, Nike. Otis ran out of the sewer, still wearing a waterproof rubber leather jacket, and looked at Niji with some surprise. "Hello, Officer Niji." Otis smiled and nodded. "Just call me Niji. Are you free tonight?" "Tonight? You are free. I have nothing to do. If you need my help with anything, I will do my best. It's not that big of a deal. Thanks to you, we have become official police officers. I would like to treat you to a meal tonight, so don't refuse." Niji picked up the suit box in his hand and handed it to Otis. 7 o'clock tonight. See you there at the Zeus Hotel in the Diamond District. Chapter 11 Zeus Hotel. The theme design of Zeus Hotel is based on the ancient Greek style. 12 towering white marble pillars are like supporting the temple of the ancient Greek gods. The hall is magnificent, with portraits of Greek gods hanging on the walls. There is also a statue of the Greek priest Zeus holding a punishing thunderbolt in the front of the hall. The huge statue looks so majestic that mortals can only look up and feel the unfathomable greatness and terror of the divine power. But Niji dismissed this. Maxi Zeus, the owner of the Zeus Hotel, really thinks of himself as Zeus descending to Earth. But this is just a word in Gotham if it reaches the ears of Wonder Woman on Paradise Island. Unless this hotel is demolished, Wonder Woman Diana has a good temper. After all, Zeus is her biological father. "Mumu, I'm a little nervous." Jerry, who was wearing a suit, said very unpromisingly. His broad body looked like a bodyguard in the suit, and at least he looked very good. "Calm down. Mr. Cabson, you have to show your courage. This place is not a man-eating tiger. What are you afraid of? Look at Otis." Niji turned to point at Otis and was momentarily speechless. Otis's whole body froze nervously, like a wax figure in a funny movie, standing there motionless. Some of the well-dressed and expensive guests couldn't help but smile when they saw their appearance. They didn't mean anything malicious. They just felt a little funny. Niji was wearing a dark striped suit with his hands in his pockets, an unlit thin cigar in his mouth, and reflective black leather shoes on his feet, tapping the ground impatiently. "Sorry I'm late." Oswald hurried in from outside, wearing a shiny oily hair, tie, and a valuable custom-made suit, and he was very gentlemanly. When I walked in, I opened the door for a lady and let her in first, which is simply a model. In comparison, Niji and the others look like street gangsters. "Waiter, get ready to serve. We have reserved table 31 in the revolving restaurant." Niji raised his hand and called out gracelessly. The waiter, who had been waiting nearby for a long time, smiled awkwardly. He was obviously helpless towards these nouveau riche, but he still stretched out his hand in a professional manner and said, "Please come over here." Niji and the others followed the waiter towards the elevator, and halfway through they found Otis still standing there. Niji ran over and pushed Otis directly into the elevator. "I'll get 4 of the steaks that are very well done, and a bottle of Louis Roederer champagne, and cream of mushroom soup, and 4 of this caviar. I'll have chocolate cake for dessert, and 4 grilled chicken legs." Niji sat on a chair, holding a menu and ordering dishes. The waiter, who was taking notes nearby, nodded quickly, not caring about the appetizers or the afterdishes. In short, the cost of this meal is definitely a qualified guest, and he must be served as God. "Is there anything else you want? Order it for yourself." Niji put the menu on the table. Jerry and Otis shook their heads quickly, and Oswald said with a smile, "That's enough. Then let's try it too. I'm really looking forward to the skills of the chef here." Niji smiled and leaned on the chair. "Well, I saw in a TV series that people eat 7 ripe ones. Isn't it a bit embarrassing to eat 10 ripe ones?" Jerry looked around and whispered, "Come on, 10 rare is the most delicious, and it's also the test of the chef. The key is that the steak that is cooked at 10 rare can still remain tender, so the meat quality must be very good." "Moo, you're very knowledgeable about this, but it is true that some bastards always like to use inferior steaks to fool people." Oswald laughed and joked, and Niji laughed without explaining. Without even a few words of conversation, the champagne was served and the dishes were placed on the table one after another. "Everyone, I won't say anything more. Today we are gathered here as friends who can talk to each other. Cheers!" Niji raised a wine glass in his hand. Jerry and the others also raised their wine glasses, and they touched each other. "By the way, Oswald, this is Otis Flanagan, our friend we made in Arkham." Niji extended his hand and introduced Oswald. Otis looked surprised. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Flanagan. You are a friend of Moo and the others, which is also my friend." Oswald stretched out his hand and shook hands with Otis seriously, with a sincere smile on his face. Otis was very flattered and sat on the chair restrainedly. He had never even thought about this place, let alone eating here or with friends. "Otis, you don't need to be so restrained. We are all ordinary people. We may be a little worse than you." Niji smiled and waved his hand. Oswald held the wine glass and thought for a moment, and then said, Moo, can I ask you a favor?" "You said it." Niji nodded. Oswald helped them, and they should help each other again if there is something they need. Only by helping each other can they be helped for a long time. "Well, do you have a guy in Arkham who can sew people together?" "Sewn together?" After Jerry heard this, he was a little confused. What is suturing together? Is it the kind of doctor who sews scars together? Oswald shook his head, cut off a piece of steak with a table knife, and threw it into his mouth. While chewing, he said, "It's the kind where you sew a person's hands on their feet and cut off their face and sew it on their belly. There have been several cases in the Lower East Side. One of my boys encountered one. His 5-year-old brother disappeared. His hands and feet were chopped off and sewn together. I have to help him take revenge." Niji, who was sitting next to him, picked up his wine glass and took a sip. His brows wrinkled slightly. Suturing hands and feet seemed a bit familiar. Like the work of Professor Pig-Faced, the centuplets created by that guy's stitching of monsters all wear pig-faced masks, which are several times more disgusting than the human centipede or the humanoid seal. "Does that guy have a pig-faced mask on his face?" Niji asked. "Mask?" Oswald thought for a moment and shook his head. "I don't know. We didn't catch him, but one of my intelligence lines in the police station said that a special investigation team has started to investigate this BD. I want to kill him with my own hands." When Oswald said this, his voice was very cold. This was an opportunity and a challenge for him. If he could really take revenge, his reputation in the Roman Empire would be even higher. No matter which aspect he considers, he will never let go of the vicious pervert who sews people together like rag dolls. Niji nodded and asked, "How do you know that he has gone to Arkham District now?" "Our area is not an ordinary chaos, and the police in many places cannot intervene. It was discovered by a sergeant from the Gotham Police Department. They found a kidnapped orphan along the sewers. They followed him all the way and will probably go to your police station. By the way, that police chief's name is Gordon. James Gordon is a tough guy," Oswald said solemnly. "The policeman who dares not to give face to the Romans is the only one in the entire Gotham Police Department who has retired from the Special Operations Team." When Niji heard the name, a curious look appeared on his face. That was the only conscience of the Gotham Police, Chief Gordon, a policeman who truly protects justice. He is old-fashioned, and persistent, but he is also a tragic hero. Whether it is his daughter whose spine was broken by Joker, or she was tortured by the villains, it didn't make him waver in the slightest. Maybe this is the kind of person who can emerge from the mire without staining. Niji shook his head. "In addition to suturing the limbs, are there any other clues? If it's like this, there is very little news. There are people around him, many like monsters. Oswald said with a frown, because he didn't know clearly. Okay, I'll pay attention. Niji nodded, and Oswald's cell phone suddenly rang. He raised his hand to signal, bowed apologetically, and walked out with his cell phone. After a while, he came back. Sorry, something happened over there. A guy wearing a hood hit one of our people. I have to deal with it. Hood? Batman? What kind of headgear? Niji asked. I don't know. There's a red-hooded gang that's been provoking people recently. They're probably those bastards. They're the scum who hide their heads and show their tails. Oswald walked out with a fierce look on his face, and Niji suddenly stopped him. Wait, umbrella. Niji came over with the black umbrella that had been wiped clean and arranged, and handed it to Oswald. Safe travels. Oswald smiled knowingly, turned the umbrella in his hand, and put it under his arm, then bowed like a gentleman. Gentlemen, I wish you a pleasant meal. After speaking, he turned around and left coolly. Nyamu looked at his back, then turned to look at the bright night scene outside the window. Between the brightly lit high-rise buildings, there are the sounds of sirens, flashing red and blue police lights, and darkness that even light cannot penetrate. Chapter 12 Emergency Situations. After a full meal, drinking is a pleasure, but when it comes to paying the bill, it's a pain in the A. There are only a few bills left in the thick stack. Niji threw the remaining banknotes to Jerry and watched him happily receive them into his wallet. Otis next to him was holding a piece of honey cake and feeding Bastion, the big light brown mouse. It had just rained lightly outside and the road was wet. The lights of passing vehicles were very beautiful on the ground. From a sewer on the roadside, not far away, thick white-hot air was sprayed out. It was already a late autumn night, and a gust of wind blew, making people feel a bit cold. Otis, get in the car, and I'll take you back. Niji took out the police car keys from his arms and wanted to drive over. Otis, who was following behind, shook his head. Well, I won't go back now. I may be able to find some clues about the person that Mr. just mentioned. Huh? Niji turned around and looked over. Otis, who was holding the big mouse, had a happy smile on his face. In order to attend the dinner, he specially cut his hair into a neat buzz cut and fixed it with mousse like a brush. Niji, thank you. Thank you for not disliking me and treating me as a friend. I can also help you, so just let me go. Otis said seriously. Niji held the car keys and looked at him. The two looked at each other for a moment and finally smiled at each other. This is for you, be careful. Niji pulled out a Glock 17 from his waist and handed it to Otis. We are friends and will always be. Yeah. Otis held the pistol and nodded heavily. We're going back. Jerry opened the car door and waved to him. Niji sat in the driver's seat and started the police car, turned on the police lights, and the flashing red and blue police lights came on. Here, you're not used to using a revolver. Jerry smiled and handed his Glock 17 to Niji. Niji didn't refuse. He took it and put it on the holster on his waist, backed the police car out of the parking lot, honked the horn twice, and drove forward along the road. Otis, who was watching the police car go away, raised his hand and stroked Bastion's fur, then walked in the opposite direction with a smile. In a dark alley, a group of mice ran over carrying a handbag. Otis opened his handbag, changed out of his suit, carefully placed it in a moisture-proof bag, and took out the leather overalls, boots, and gloves that he wore in the water. There was also a portable lamp and a yellow gas mask on his head. Finally, he took out a bundle of rope and hung it on his belt. He opened the sewer cover on the ground and jumped out. In the dark sewer, Otis was holding a lantern, and dozens of rats gathered from all directions, gathering around him like a pilgrim. Go find that person. Otis raised his hand and waved, his voice a little dull while wearing a gas mask, but the rats ran out quickly. On the way back to Arkham District, Niji saw his colleagues driving police cars nearby at night. Police cars with their lights flashing were driving towards one place quickly. Just when Niji and the others were about to get on the main road, a shout came from the onboard obedient platform in the police car. Are you the police officers in that area? Please answer. A somewhat hoarse male voice sounded. His voice was very rough, as if his throat had been injured by shouting. Niji reached out and picked up the pager, looked ahead and shouted, We are police officers affiliated with the Arkham Police Department, and we are on our way back. I am James Gordon from the Gotham Police Department. I am temporarily calling your police car and go to 46th Street in Coventry immediately. Hurry. Platform communication hung up. Meowji and Jerry looked at each other and quickly turned the steering wheel. The police car turned around on the road and drove along the main road towards Coventry District. There were particularly many police cars along the way. There was also a special operations team from the Gotham Police Department, driving a black anti-riot police car with sirens on, and caught up from behind. What's going on? Has Gotham turned upside down? Jerry became nervous when he saw this scene. There were more than a dozen police cars on the whole street with lights and sirens on. The scene was not ordinary and spectacular. Stop talking nonsense. Something big is probably going to happen. Take out your guns. Damn, what's going on? Neji cursed and threw the enforcer revolver in his arms to Jerry. The guy didn't have the habit of carrying a spare gun. Quickly opening the safety and checking it, Jerry put the gun in his waistband and began to take off his clothes. They were still wearing suits for the hotel. In this situation, it would definitely be a bad situation not to wear police uniforms. Coventry is a relatively prosperous middle-class residential area. Because it is close to Robinson Park and Gotham University, it has convenient transportation and beautiful environment, making it an ideal place to live. But tonight, the peace here was broken by the piercing sound of police sirens. As soon as Neji and the others drove the police car to Avenue 46, they saw a bus rushing past. Chase! Don't let them escape. The bomb disposal team is here. An impatient voice sounded from the vehicle platform. Neji turned the steering wheel and rushed directly into the office building next to him. He took a shortcut from there and stepped on the accelerator. The police car was ejected and accelerated away, as if it had been kicked. If Sheriff Ma Yid saw this scene, he would definitely want to take out his gun and kill the BD Neji. In the bus that rushed out in front, a group of robbers wearing red hoods were having a carnival in the bus with wads of bills. Ouch! So much money, great. A member of the Red Hood grabbed a handful of green banknotes and threw them over his head. He was also wearing a series of necklaces and rings on all 10 fingers. Even the AK rifle in his hand was wrapped with a gold necklace. And the car was full of bags containing gold, silver, jewelry, and banknotes. Just 3 hours ago, they looted a middle-class community. Those who worked in large companies and were known as elite white-collar workers and gold-collar workers were tied up and took away all their property with sticks. The gold, silver, jewelry, and boxes full of banknotes in the car were just trivial. They took away tens of millions of assets in overseas bank accounts at once. Boss, there are police chasing you. A member wearing a red hood and jacket with the number 5 written in paint on his chest pointed at the back of the bus. More than a dozen police cars were in hot pursuit. The red-hooded boss, who was sitting on the bus chair and looking at the computer to transfer overseas account assets, turned his head and looked over, with a number 10 written on his chest. Through the red hood, the dazzling police lights on the back of the bus are still very clear. Get rid of them. Following the order, Red Hood number 3, who was driving in front, quickly accelerated. This bus was modified by them. Moo, be careful. Jerry, who was on the passenger side of the police car, reached out to grab the steering wheel, raised his leg, and stepped on the accelerator, shouting loudly to the side. Be careful. Half of Neji's body was ejected from the car window. He was holding a Glock 17 with both hands, but the police car could still maintain a steady speed. Are you kidding? Racing with robbers? If he were the commander, he would directly activate the heavy firepower and learn from the Russian anti-terrorism experience. The bus was getting closer and closer, and there was a green belt in the middle. Meow Moo could see the figure in the window of the bus. The Red Hood is still made of reflective material, which is as conspicuous as a light bulb. Pull the trigger with your finger. Bang, 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 bang. A bullet was fired from the muzzle of the Glock 17, and Neji's body shook due to the shock of the recoil. Jerry, who was in the car, reached out and grabbed his waistband to prevent him from falling out of the car. The people in the bus were miserable. Red Hood number 7 was directly shot in the head and fell onto a bag of banknotes. The blood flowed on the green banknotes like a winding stream. Chapter 13, Red Hood, the accelerating bus, was very quiet, and the robbers wearing red hoods all squatted down. There were still 6 or 7 bullet holes in the glass on the right side of the bus. Red Hood number 7 lay motionless on the money bag. The smell of blood filled the air and stunned these bold robbers. The cheerful look just now was like a bucket of cold water being poured on them. How dare those useless Gotham police officers do this? The member of the Red Hood, who wore a necklace around his neck, a ring on his hand, and the number 1 painted on his chest, stood up with an AK rifle in hand, pointed at the police car behind the window on the right, and pulled the trigger. Go to hell! The sudden gunfire covered up their inner fear, and the glass of the bus was shattered. As soon as Niji sat back in the driver's seat, the hood of the police car was hit by bullets several times. He was so frightened that he quickly slowed down and distanced himself. Even so, the windshield was hit by 2 bullets. FK. How cruel! Niji looked at the broken windshield, cursed with some fear, kicked the accelerator, and rushed forward again. Jerry next to him had a frighteningly pale face and was still mumbling God's blessing. The bullet that had just penetrated the glass and flew over his head had almost killed him in the line of duty. Biba! A harsh sound of radio waves sounded from the car phone platform, and then a loud male voice came out. I am Farah's, captain of the Gotham Police Special Operations Team. Where are you from? Niji picked up the pager, looked at the bus, turning sharply in front of him, and quickly turned the steering wheel to follow it. We are from the Arkham Police Department. I am Niji and my partner Jerry Cab's son. We are following the bus, and they turned. Arkham? Niji. Ferris hesitated for a moment. Someone from the Arkham branch appeared here, and it was with such a strange name. But he reacted immediately and shouted in a commanding tone, Don't let them escape. Bite them hard. We will be there soon. The black explosion-proof car driven by the Special Operations Team could never increase its speed. I don't know if the driver couldn't step on the accelerator or if he didn't have a good pursuit mentality. I was thrown out by the bus for half a street, and even the taillights of the car were invisible at this turn. Niji thought for a moment and hung up the call, looking at the bus speeding ahead. Fortunately, there wasn't much traffic on the road here at night, so there was no accident. Otherwise, it would be a disaster. Moo, aren't you afraid? Jerry leaned on the passenger seat and held the enforcer revolver tightly. His nervousness had not yet eased. This was indeed too exciting for him. Jerry, people's fear comes from the unknown. Don't be afraid. There is nothing to be afraid of. We have to climb up, just like the steak tonight. We can eat it every day in the future. If you are afraid, just think about what we ate in the Lower East Side. Do you still want to live that kind of life? I don't. What's more terrible than death is dying poor. I don't want to die in such a miserable way. I want to climb up. With the fire of ambition in his eyes, Niji stepped on the accelerator and accelerated again, directly cutting to the left side of the bus at the intersection ahead. Shit, damn it, fake squid. Jerry's timid heart disappeared without a trace when Niji said this. Asking him to go back and live a life in the slums was no different from making someone blind after seeing colors. Put down the window. Hit. Niji shouted sharply. Go to hell. Jerry gritted his teeth and punched it, smashing the window glass. He raised the revolver in his hand, pointed it at the bus glass above, and fired a burst of fire. Bang, 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 bang. After 6 rounds, the revolver stopped firing. The Red Hood members on the bus also took this opportunity to stretch out the barrel of their gun from a shattered window and shoot. Niji released the accelerator and moved directly behind the bus. Looking at the situation of the bus, the police car slowed down again. Jerry, you drive. I'll do the driving. Niji gritted his teeth and shouted, stretched out his hand to pull down the driver's seat, and flipped it directly to the back seat. Jerry, who was loading the revolver, saw this scene and quickly rushed over to steady the steering wheel and put his foot on the accelerator. Meow Moo in the back seat opened the door, and the bus in front suddenly turned and headed west. Jerry also quickly turned the steering wheel. This sharp turn almost threw Niji out of the car. Mom, get out of here. Niji lay on the back seat and kicked the car door open, then kicked it down again. The door that fell off the police car flew straight out and fell to the ground, creating a series of sparks. Niji took a deep breath, reached out and grabbed the golden 6-pointed star hanging around his neck, and his vision widened in an instant. Jerry, pass, blow out their tires, and step on the accelerator. It's time to fight, Niji shouted with a ferocious expression, and the Glock 17 in his hand was also replaced with an extended magazine carrying 19 rounds of ammunition. Jerry also yelled angrily, turned the steering wheel fiercely, stepped on the accelerator to the bottom, and smoke started coming out of the hood in front. The police car's engine roared and roared, rushing directly to the left front of the bus. The red hooded members on the bus also picked up their guns to intercept. Bang, 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 bang. The gun in Niji's hand rang out, and it hit the bus window like water. The few Red Hood members who wanted to intercept were silenced by this burst of firepower. In just a few seconds, Niji pointed at the rear wheel of the bus and emptied the magazine, and the sound of gunfire continued. There was a muffled sound, and the rear wheel exploded. The bus tilted, and the wheels rubbed against the ground, causing sparks. The accelerating police car was also squeezed by the bus that tilted to the left and drove off the road. "It's over, God!" Jerry screamed, and the police car hit the guardrail and crashed into the water. This was the Gotham River. The police car was submerged in the water. Jerry struggled outwards, and the door could not be pushed or opened. The seedlings behind him choked on the water. The bus on the road also stopped awkwardly, almost falling into the Gotham River together, and the door opened. Red Hood number 1 rushed down, holding an AK rifle, and fired a burst of fire at the quiet Gotham River. The bullets hit the water and caused a series of splashes. "Okay, let's retreat before those bastards catch up," Red Hood number 10 said in a deep voice, holding a laptop under his arm and looking at the Gotham River shrouded in darkness. I cursed in my heart. Since when did Gotham have such desperate police officers? They really deserve to die. I am hurt. There was a scream on the bus, and Red Hood number 3 sat on it with his hands on his thighs. He was hit by a ricochet, which was quite unlucky. Red Hood number 10 was silent for a moment and looked at the people around him. There were 8 of them in total. One of them was killed during the withdrawal, plus the one whose head was shot on the road. They still have 6 people, and now another one is injured. At this moment, the sound of a police car sounded on the road behind, which made them as nervous as frightened birds. "Escape first. Let's go." Red Hood number 10 is about to run away with his notebook under his arm. Red Hood no. 3 heard this in the bus and shouted quickly, "You can't leave me behind. Get rid of him." Red Hood number 10 ordered number 1, who was holding an AK rifle, and fled quickly with his men. Only Red Hood number 3 is left in the car, and Red Hood number 1 and Red Hood number 9 are under the car. Red Hood no. 1 took out a magazine from the bulletproof vest stuffed with banknotes and put it on the AK rifle. He glanced at the river warily, but couldn't see anything in the pitch black. Got on the bus with an AK rifle. Chapter 14, Shark Tooth Arm Armor. The seedlings who fell into the water frowned as they were choked by the water. Jerry climbed out of the driver's seat and pushed him to the surface. Before they could take a breath, a series of bullets fell nearby. Fortunately, the place where they emerged from the water was far away. Otherwise, they would have been beaten into a sieve. Seedlings looked at the people standing on the shore and quickly dragged Jerry, who was trying to struggle, into the water again. Ding! Encounter hidden treasures. Discover obtainable items. Meow Moo, who had just dived into the water, almost choked again. There was something in the water. He pushed Jerry to the edge of the water and asked him to calm down. Niji observed the people on the shore, quietly took a deep breath, and plunged into the water. He felt in his heart that the thing was in the mud near the river beach. This feeling was very clear, exactly the same as when he found the Eye of True Seeing last time. Under the wide field of view of the Eye of True Sight, even the seedlings in the water can clearly see the things in the mud of the river beach. Approaching the place that was on his mind, Meow Moo reached out and dug in the mud. The breath he was holding was no longer enough. Niji reached in anxiously, but the soft mud didn't stop him much. He touched something hard like a stick, but there was no explanation like the Eye of True Seeing. "I can't stay here any longer." Niji felt that he was almost suffocated. He gritted his teeth and pulled the hard object and rushed toward the water surface. He stuck his head out of the water and took 2 deep breaths. Under the cover of the night, Meowji took a few breaths and realized that what he was holding was a bone arm with a black arm armor on it. Only the forearm part was like a metal sleeve. Niji stretched out his hand and pulled the gauntlet off the bone. As soon as he touched it, he knew what it was. Shark Tooth Gauntlet. Metal armor. 3 sharp shark tooth blades can pop out from the gauntlet, unlimited. Jerry, who was floating in the water next to him, saw the seedlings and stepped on the water to get closer. Niji put on the gauntlet on his right hand and clenched his fist hard from the raised gap on the side of the arm armor. 3 sharp blades with barbs popped out like saws, and this thing was very strong, although it didn't feel heavy. "Mumu, what should I do?" Jerry asked with a trembling voice. The water in the Gotham River was really cold at this time, so they had to be strong, otherwise they would really sink to the bottom of the river. Niji looked towards the bus. Why were there only 2 people there? Red Hood number 1 seemed to feel something. He turned his head and looked towards the river. After making sure there was nothing, he walked onto the bus with his AK rifle. 2 against 1. Kill him. Niji looked at Red Hood number 9 standing under the bus, holding an M16 automatic rifle in his hand, and dragged Jerry towards the shore. "I still have this. There are a few bullets in it." Jerry pulled out the revolver from his pants and raised it out of the water. Water kept flowing out of the gun. "It should be okay to shoot." 3, 2, 1. Niji leaned against the water and waved fiercely, pushing Jerry forward. Jerry, holding the gun in both hands, pulled the trigger with a ferocious expression. Click, click. 2 shots in a row were empty. Red Hood number 9, who was under the bus, also spotted Jerry in the water and raised the M16 rifle in his hand to shoot. Bang! The gun went off. Bang, 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 bang. Gunshots also rang out in the bus. The gunfire from both sides overlapped. Jerry's revolver fired twice more, and Red Hood number 9 was hit by a bullet. It was like being hit by a hammer. 2 snowflakes exploded from his body, and he fell backwards. He was hit by a gunshot, and his nose was smashed. Suddenly, I fell behind and sat under the bus. Jerry gasped and lay down on the shore. There was no bullet in the gun. It was really thrilling just now. Nyamu swam over and climbed onto the riverbank, rushing directly towards the bus. In the bus, Red Hood number 1, who had just helped Red Hood number 3 solve the pain, was packing the bags containing money and jewelry on the floor and planned to leave. The sound of thumping footsteps sounded from behind. Red Hood number 1 thought it was number 9 from outside who came in. He was about to turn around and ask for a few more bags of money. The rushing Niji raised his arm and punched Red Hood number 1 in the face, knocking him to the ground. Niji didn't pause for a moment. He raised his right arm and smashed it down like a hammer. The hard armor hit Red Hood number 1's head hard. The force was so heavy that stars appeared in his eyes. Niji raised his arm and smashed it down one by one, 7 times in a row. Then he grabbed Red Hood number 1's collar, raised his arm, and punched him in the face. He kept hitting him until his head was broken and bleeding, and he fainted. Without stopping, Niji held the 3 sharp blades on his fist and gauntlet and popped them out. Just when Red Hood number 1 was about to be beheaded, Niji came back to his senses and suddenly hit the chair next to him. With a sudden thud, the chair was smashed. As Niji sat on the ground and gasped, the strength that had been mobilized by adrenaline suddenly dissipated. This night was a little too exciting. Mumu. Jerry walked in with the M16 rifle he picked up from the corpse, holding the gun carefully. On the road outside, the roaring police car was already chasing me, and several searchlights shone on the bus. Niji sat slumped on the ground and looked at the gold and silver jewelry, necklaces and rings on Red Hood number 1. He quickly reached out and grabbed a handful and stuffed them into his pants. People inside, listen, you are surrounded. The members of the Gotham Special Operations Team all wore black combat uniforms and body armor, holding MP5 tactical submachine guns in their arms, with tactical flashlights and flash suppressors in front. A series of footsteps sounded, and several flashlights illuminated the bus. Hands up. Get down on the ground. One of our own. Police. We are from Arkham. Jerry quickly threw away the rifle in his hand. If he was killed by one of his own people, he would be really wronged. Even so, he was held to the head with a gun. Niji, who was slumped on the ground, took this opportunity to grab another wad of bills and stuff them into his pants. Fortunately, when he changed into his suit, he wore long johns and socks so that his private parts wouldn't be exposed when he stood up. Under the bus, a burly man with a walkie-talkie in his hand was arranging for people to surround the place. Niji and the others were carried off the bus. "Hello, I'm Fraz, the captain of the Special Operations Team. Can you tell me what's going on here?" Fraz saluted and looked at the wet seedlings and Jerry behind him. "Hello, we are Niji from Arkham Police Department, Jerry Cab's son." Niji stretched out his hand and gestured backwards. Jerry also nodded. "Hello, Captain." Fraz looked at Niji in surprise. "Can you tell me what happened here? How did they die?" "We did it. Jerry shot this one to death. There was another person on the bus who was not dead. They killed each other, and I knocked him unconscious in a sneak attack." "You mean you two not only caught up with them, but also forced them to stop and even killed one of them?" Fraz felt like he had heard a fantasy, and it felt unreal. But what he said reminded Niji. "Our car. That our police car was hid into the river when we were forcing the other party to stop." Niji rubbed his hands, hoping to get rid of this. Flass looked at the broken fence by the roadside and the car marks on the shore and nodded. "I understand. You too. You're the heroes who saved this place. But you should deal with your situation first and change into clean clothes. We will record it for you later." Fraz waved his hand and asked people to take Niji and the others back to change clothes. But the moment they left, the look on Fraz's face turned into sarcasm and disdain. "Hero, are you worthy?" Niji and the others didn't realize this. Niji was very willing to leave here. The things in his pants had to be moved quickly. Moreover, Niji reached out and touched the gauntlet on his right hand. The strong touch made an unconscious smile appear on his face. A police car drove over, and the car door opened, and a man in a brown trench coat walked over in a hurry. He also wore a pair of glasses on his face and a mustache on his lips. "Chief Gordon?" Niji stopped and shouted. James Gordon heard someone calling him and stopped. Niji smiled and stretched out his hand to gesture to him. They were snatched away by the members of the Special Operations Team behind them, and the two of them were put into a police car and driven to the nearest police station. Chief Gordon looked at their backs, shook his head in confusion, and walked towards the bus. Chapter 15 idle in a blink of an eye. 3 days passed. Niji was lying on the bed wearing big underpants. The sunlight, coming from behind the curtains, shone on his feet that were tilted up and dangling. He was holding a metropolitan newspaper in his hand. After the robbery, their police chief Maze's face was as black as the bottom of a pot, and he almost shot both of them with a gun. After finally making a fuss at the police station, the two of them were suspended for reflection. That robbery also set off huge amounts of public opinion in Gotham. After all, the elites lived there. They were robbed by the robbers and had a time bomb planted with their lives hanging by a thread. The mayor was so scolded by the media that he took a sick leave, and the Gotham police were also scolded as trash, even though they were trash in the first place. The only one who was captured, Red Hood No. 1, as well as several robbers who were shot dead, and the intercepted bus became the military medals of the Gotham Police Department. Fraz, the captain of the Special Operations Team, also accepted an interview with reporters. The retired Special Forces soldier who talked freely on TV made Niji and the others very unhappy, but there was nothing they could do about it. The credit must be divided. They are just ordinary first-level police officers of the Arkham Division, but I didn't expect that it really has nothing to do with them. Originally, Niji was still thinking that no matter how corrupt they were, they would have to be promoted to a higher position. The sergeant did not dare to think that it would be no problem to become a second-level police officer or a third-level police detective. The result was nothing, and the debt for the destruction of the police car was added to them. The character of those bastards was overestimated. It was only Niji who stuffed something into his pants when he arrived. Otherwise, he would have suffered a huge loss. The door was pushed open, and a shirtless Jerry, wiping his head with a towel, walked in from the outside. He stood in front of the mirror on the wall, humming a tune and shaving his face with a razor. The place they live in has no bathroom, no high-end kitchen, and only one bedroom, nothing else. Pushing the door in, there is a window in front, a table under the window, 2 single beds on the left and right of the table, and 2 police uniforms and some wrinkled suits hanging on the wall. Niji lay on the bed and put down the newspaper, raised his head and glanced behind him. Is there still water in the bathroom? It's hot. No, the cold shower I took was so cold. Jerry shaved his face and said that the apartment building they lived in was a slum apartment built by Italians. There was only one bathroom on each floor, no toilet, no kitchen, and everyone had to compete for hot water for bathing. The old Italian man would often come over to check on me. If he used more hot water, he would scold me. If it weren't for the fact that his rent was cheap and could be extended, he would have been beaten to death. Boring. Niji lay on the pillow, reading the newspaper of Metropolis. Yes, there is the Metropolis where Superman protects. This Daily Planet is where Superman Clark works, and Niji also saw the small section written by Superman about environmental protection and peace. The tofu block at the end of the 5th edition, which would have been indistinguishable if it weren't for the signature, is the headline. Lu-2 was defeated by Superman again. To be precise, it should be that he was defeated again, but Niji saw a little opportunity, an opportunity to make money. Opportunities for police to illegally speculate in stocks. Lex Luthor, a bald man who claims to have 9 levels of wisdom, Superman's old enemy, and the rich and powerful chairman of the Lex Group. Lex Group is even more powerful than Wayne Group in some super technical aspects, but he chose to fight Superman to the death. Niji lay on the pillow, reached for the revolver next to him, and checked the magazine. 6 rounds were fully loaded. The Glock pistol sank in the river along with the police car. Niji took a revolver and aimed it at the torn curtain hanging on the window. Stock trading is risky, but as the saying goes, the bigger the storm, the more expensive the fish. Whether it is the current Wayne Group or the Wayne Group that will develop in the fields of environmental protection and people's livelihood in the future, they are both Jindu Obeo that makes money, and there is no future in speculation. But Luthor is different. After he was defeated by Superman and thrown into prison, the stock price of Lex Group fell. When he came out and came up with new inventions, it skyrocketed. After this surge, there will be a PK between him and Superman. It's not easy for investors. If you pay him money, you can watch Superman tear apart mechas and dismantle Gundams, and watch the fireworks at the same time. Moo, I'm going down to eat. Are you going? After shaving, Jerry combed his hair with a comb and hung a gold necklace as thick as a finger around his neck, dressing up as if he was going on a date. Eat. Bring me a burrito. I want beef. I'll also bring 2 fried chicken legs, 2 rice balls, and a bottle of beer. Lying on the bed, Niji said that there's a Mexican restaurant downstairs. The name is Mexican Restaurant, but because the crowd here is different, all kinds of food are available, just like a fast food restaurant. Okay. Jerry smiled in the mirror, put on his shirt, jacket, shoes, and ran out. The door was not even closed, and Niji smiled helplessly. During the recent days of rest, the twin daughters of the owner of the Mexican restaurant below have been having a heated fight with Jerry. In the past, I had neither money nor time, and I was still working as a precarious intern. It's different now. Now that I have a job and money, it's much easier to flirt with girls. Niji yawned, raised his arms and rolled up his sleeves, and wiped the shark tooth gauntlet on his right arm clean. It clings to the arm like a rubber sleeve, with fine silver-white triangular lines on it, and a raised gap on the side. Niji waved his hand and struck, and 3 curved blades instantly popped out from the arm armor. They smashed hard and then sliced open, killing half of his life. Squeak! There was a sound at the door. Niji held the pistol and turned around to look. A big light brown mouse was standing at the door, raising his head and sniffing the smell in the air. This is Bastion, Niji shouted with some surprise. This is the mouse next to Otis. His name is Bastion. It is also the partner who accompanied Otis in Blackgate Prison for 10 years. When Bastion heard Niji's voice, a smile appeared on his face, and he hurried in. There were several pairs of worn shoes, newspapers, beer bottles, and so on thrown on the ground. 2 bachelors' bedrooms are good enough for people to live in them. Squeak, squeak. Busties pulled a paper roll from his tail. Did Otis ask you to come? Niji reached out and took the scroll, opened it, and read it. There was only a very brief sentence on it. A body was found. See you at the sewage plant. Corpse. Niji looked at the note and then at Bastion. He quickly reached for a pair of pants and put them on. The revolver and handcuffs were all hung on his belt. During the suspension period, the police card was kept at the police station. Grabbing the police uniform jacket and putting it on, Niji reached out to Busties. TSK, come here, let's go find Otis. Bastion grabbed Niji's arm and skillfully jumped into his coat pocket. The heavy weight pulled the coat askew. You have to let Otis help you lose weight. Niji took out his sunglasses and put them on his face, put on his leather shoes, and walked outside, closing the door. The place they lived in was on the 6th floor. There was no elevator and they had to walk down the stairs, so Niji didn't bother to go down. When you are full, bring the food up and your digestion will be almost complete. Mexican restaurant downstairs. Niji originally wanted to ask Jerry to come with him, but she saw him sitting at a small round table in the restaurant, holding a cup of coffee. The two Mexican girls, who looked almost the same and had fluffy curly hair but wore aprons of 2 different colors, were laughing there and telling cute little jokes. Why didn't I realize he was so good at talking before? Niji shook his head and did not disturb his little date. He walked toward the sewage treatment plant with Bastion in his pocket. Chapter 16, Stitching the Corpse. As soon as Niji arrived at the sewage treatment plant, Bastion jumped out of his pocket, landed on the ground, and ran towards the sewer. Niji followed and scanned the surroundings. He saw fewer homeless people before, but now there are some new faces. The homeless men looked at the black police uniform on Niji and shrank in fear in the shadow of the iron frame. Came back. Otis, who was sitting in the sewer, looked at Busties running over, smiled, and touched its hair. What body was found? Niji came over and asked. Seeing the seedlings, Otis stood up quickly, pointed into the sewer, and said, I found on the filter screen of the 2nd floor sewer. It took a while to get him up. Niji looked at Otis's haggard expression, patted him on the shoulder, nodded, and said, Thank you for your hard work. It's okay. By the way, I'll give you the gun back. I met something running very fast on the road and used a few bullets. Otis hurriedly handed the Glock 17 pistol to Niji, who waved his hand. No, this gun is for you for self-defense. By the way, what did you encounter? Niji asked curiously, glancing at Otis's shoulder, which was still wrapped with a bandage. I don't know. It wasn't a mouse anyway. It moved very quickly like a ball and scratched me. Otis recalled the thing he met in the sewer, shook his head, and put away the Glock pistol. By the way, I went to the police station and couldn't find you, so I asked Bastion to look for you. Did something happen to you? Haha, it's nothing. I just let people deceive me for a while and then take it back. I'm not that big-hearted. Niji smiled and replied without explaining, and walked towards the sewer, with Otis following behind. There's a special smell floating in the sewer. It is not the smell of sewage, but the smell of rot. Not far away, Niji saw the corpse Otis was talking about. There was a portable lamp hanging next to it. Under the light, the corpse looked very huge, like a mountain of meat. Just one glance at Niji made his stomach churn, but unfortunately there was nothing in his stomach that he couldn't vomit out. The corpse soaked in the water turned white and swollen, and it looked like a giant. Moreover, the corpse hit the filter screen of the sewer, and the soaked skin and flesh were cut into pieces by the filter screen, like tofu. There was also a rotten smell, which was very pungent. Niji raised his hands to cover his nose and mouth, frowning and looking at the pieced-together body. Yes, it was pieced together. There were 4 hands and 3 legs on the corpse, and several pieces of skin were sewn on the swollen and deformed face, just like several people's faces were sewn onto one person's face. The stitched areas on the body were tightly pinched in due to the swelling of the flesh, just like a patched-up rag doll. Abnormal, Niji said with a frown. The murderer has not been found. There are many places in the sewers that even rats dare not go to, but it should be in the Arkham area. I found some things. Look, Otis walked to the wall and picked up a bag from the shadows, put it in front of a portable lamp, and opened it. Inside was a pile of saws, drill bits, and wire for sewing. Without exception, there were traces of dried blood on them. Seedlings looked at the things inside, bent down, and picked up a small stainless steel handsaw, which was used to cut bones. After thinking for a moment, Miamu casually threw the saw in. Call the police and leave the body to the police for disposal. Otis looked at Niji in surprise. as if he was asking why you called the police if you were a policeman. I was suspended from my job and just called the police to have others investigate. Niji clapped his hands and said, looking outside the sewer, the only light in the dark sewer, and asked curiously, I see a lot more homeless people outside. Indeed, I gave them some money before. Everyone became homeless because of some things. After having money, many people went back, but Otis smiled bitterly. There are still many people who are homeless and can only stay here. Niji nodded silently, turned to look at Otis, and asked, what about you? Do you have any ideas? Otis shook his head. He came out of Blackgate prison unclear about everything and had no goals or directions. If he hadn't met Niji, he would have collapsed long ago. It's better to teach people how to fish than to teach them how to fish. If you give them money, it's better to take them to work together so that they can survive here relying on their own ability. Otis looked at Niji, a little confused as to what he meant, but he believed what Niji said. Niji smiled and said, let's go. Let's call the police first. Click, click. 2 police officers were holding cameras and taking pictures of the sutured corpse. The police dispatched to Arkham District very quickly. Came in less than 10 minutes. However, after seeing the caller, Ease, who was in charge of dispatching the police, turned as black and smelly as a donkey's face, but he did not say anything bad to Niji and the others. About the Red Hood robbery that took place in the costly district, some gossips also spread among the police circles, and Mays also had a general idea. A police car in Arkham District that was riddled with bullet holes was also fished out of the Gotham River. Although the rumors were somewhat false, Mays no longer wanted to curse. As for the 2 men who chased the Red Hood gang, they also stopped the other party's bus, shot 2 of them to death, and captured 1 alive. This kind of joke is really not funny. How was the body discovered? Mays pinched his nose, stood beside the car, and glanced at the body over there from a distance. The 2 police officers who took the photo were already vomiting. Looking at them, they might have nightmares at night. Niji stood beside him with his arms folded and said casually, the local homeless man called the police, and he rushed up from the sewer. Maes frowned and looked at Niji sideways. Why are you here? I was suspended from my job, and I was chatting with my friends here, and I found out. What happened? Do you suspect that I did it? Niji asked, tilting his head. No, Mays said with a dark face. What should I do with the body? Should I call the forensic doctor to check it out? Niji continued to ask. Mays looked at Niji as if he were an idiot. Forensic doctor? Do they have such a thing in the Arkham branch? And is this monster human? But after thinking about it, Mays opened the door of the police car and got in, lowered the window, and waved to Niji. Niji turned around and looked around, as if it was not him that Mays was greeting. The corners of Mays's eyes twitched, and he gritted his teeth and said, Come here. It's you who is calling. Mr. Police Officer, what do you want to see me for? I am just an ordinary citizen during my suspension. Niji came over and teased with a slight smile. Mays stared at him and pointed at the body pulled out of the sewer. You are now suspended from duty and are responsible for keeping an eye on this body here. I will report to the director. If appropriate, a car will come over later. Take the body away. Sorry, I refuse. The smile on Niji's face disappeared, and he said with a cold expression, Why? Maes asked, puzzled. The person who took out this corpse is in our Arkham area. Maybe someone will come over later to kill and silence him. Look at me, look at them, it might end up like this. As Niji spoke, he pointed at himself and the 2 police officers who were vomiting at the water pipe. But what he said sent a chill down Mays's back. I don't want to face such a lunatic who chops off his hands and feet and sews them together like a rag doll. He will die. Niji shouted in surprise, frightening Mays. What do you want? Chapter 17, the Riddler sirens sounded at the sewage plant. 3 police cars drove over. 2 of them came from the Gotham Police Department, and 1 came from the Arkham Precinct. Moo. Jerry, who put on his police uniform and took back his police badge, got out of the car happily and ran towards this side. Niji sat under the shed and waved to him. Your little date blew up again. Jerry smiled and waved his hand. No problem. Where's the body? As he said that, he looked around. I built a shed in the back because I was afraid of the smell. Niji pointed behind him. In a shed held up by plastic sheeting. A black plastic bag wrapped the body, and placed it on the ground. There was also a faint smell of putrefaction surrounding it. A lot of people got out of the two police cars from the Gotham Police Department. The leader was a sloppy-looking man with a big belly and stubble all over his face. He walked over and took out his police ID card and gestured. "I'm a captain of the Gotham Police Department, Harvey Bullock. Which of you is in charge here?" "Hello, I am Officer Niji of the Arkham Police Department, and I have been ordered to guard the scene here." Niji raised his hand and saluted. "Niji, are you Chinese?" Bullock raised his eyebrows. "Yes." Niji nodded. "The dumplings in Chinatown are delicious. I like them very much." Bullock raised his thumbs and smiled, relaxing the atmosphere at the scene. "Okay, where's the body?" Niji quickly got out of the way, and the two police officers who had been thrown here by Chief Mize opened the black plastic bag on the body with a grimace. Because the weather is very good today, it is one of the few days in Gotham where you can see the sun, and the temperature is also relatively high. The black plastic bag covering the body was stuck to it. When you lift it up, you can feel the sticky state like oil from the sun or something that has deteriorated. As soon as the black plastic bag was opened, the disgusting smell came directly to his nose. Sheriff Bullock quickly covered his nose, even though the odor of tobacco, alcohol, and sweat on his body was stronger than the stench of corpses. Niji had already prepared to block his nose with paper. Jerry, who was unprepared, spurted out of his mouth, covered his mouth, and ran to the side, bending over and vomiting. He ate a lot at noon today. "Oh, shit. He is indeed such a pervert." Bullock glanced at the body and raised his hand to rub his forehead. The surrounding police officers all had painful expressions on their faces, especially Jerry, who was vomiting and was constantly challenging their nerves. They just regretted eating too much at noon today. "I cannot make it." A police officer held the vomit that was about to spurt out, turned around, and ran out, vomiting together with Jerry. Everyone else also took a few steps back and stopped looking here. "Well, your tolerance is really strong. I almost want to vomit. It's so disgusting," Brock said, looking at Niji, who looked calm. "No, I can't spit it out. I didn't eat today." Niji put his hands in his pockets and shook his head. There was a ball of paper in his nose, and he spoke in a low voice. "Okay, so who?" The forensic doctor comes over to check. Bullock turned around and shouted to the back. He also took a few steps back, left the shed supported by plastic sheets, took out the cigarette case from his pocket, and started to light a cigarette. "Chief Bullock, my name is Edward Nigma, not that one." A tall and thin young man walked towards us carrying a suitcase. He was wearing a crisp suit, his hair was meticulously combed, and he also wore a pair of gold-rimmed glasses. But when he looked at Bullock, he showed some helplessness, and Bullock nodded perfunctorily, indicating that he understood. "Edward Nigma? This name sounds familiar." Niji said with some curiosity, "This name is definitely familiar, and there is an even more familiar name, the Riddler." "Sound familiar?" Nigma turned his head and looked over, tilted his head with a slight smile, and said, "What is yours, but others use it more than you?" "Riddle?" Niji asked softly. Nigma nodded. He liked to see other people being tortured by riddles, but finding it hard to get close. "What is something that belongs to you, but someone else uses it more than you do?" Niji muttered to himself and repeated it, lost in thought. He didn't understand the riddle, but the Riddler, he understands. This guy's riddles all have a fixed routine, which is what he wants to say, or a reminder. What they just said was, "I remembered." The answer is name. I don't call it much, others call it the most. Nigma's eyes lit up and he nodded. "Yes, I didn't expect you to have a talent for guessing riddles." "Okay, let's chat later. Work, if you don't do it, it will stink," Bullock said repeatedly while holding a cigarette in his mouth. Nigma shrugged helplessly and could only put down the idea of discussing the riddle with Niji and walked towards the body with the box in hand. Seeing this, Niji quickly followed. "Mr. Nigma, do you need help?" "No, I can do it myself, it's okay," Nigma said with a smile, opening the suitcase he was carrying, and inside were the instruments for autopsy. He picked up a pair of gloves and a mask and put it on his face, put on a white coat, and walked to the body. His calm expression was not affected at all, and his psychological quality was second to none. "Mr. Nigma, "Are you a forensic doctor?" Niji took a pair of gloves and put them on and pulled a mask over his face to get the paper ball out of his nose. "No need to call me sir. I'm not a forensic scientist. I'm just part-time. I work in the police station's logistics as a manager." When Nigma said this, he even smiled. I picked up the tweezers and inspected the skin of the corpse. As soon as the tips of the tweezers clamped the skin, it suddenly burst. A thick, pus-like fluid leaked out of it. Niji also felt a little nauseous, but he couldn't leave, so he simply squatted next to the box and helped Nigma pass the things. The environment here was poor, and the body was decomposing faster than expected. Nigma directly picked up the dissection knife and cut it up like a pig butcher. Jerry and the others, who had already recovered, were even more horrified when they saw this scene. The other police officers who had not vomited also vomited. Some of the more curious homeless people came over to take a look, and after just one glance, they screamed in fright and ran away. Even Bullock didn't want to look over there. Edward Nigma wasn't very skilled, but he just didn't have a very good mind. Otherwise, in the field of autopsy, we can get rid of those BD idiots who don't eat corpses. What a shame. So unflattering. Watching the dissected seedlings up close, I felt as regretful as if I had eaten 10 pounds of bitter melon. The key was that I couldn't run. My legs were numb. The corpse was simply cut into pieces in Nigma's hands. The rotten internal organs were chopped into pieces by him. The bones were cut off with pliers, and every inch of muscle was cut. The smell of decaying corpses. Niji couldn't feel his nose anymore. It was malfunctioning, and he couldn't smell anything. When Nigma opened the corpse's skull with a hacksaw, the pus-like brain material came out and dripped onto the plastic bags laid underneath. It was really numbing. When the body was pulled out of the sewer, it could no longer be lifted, so it had to be dissected on the spot, but I didn't expect it to be so terrible. Chapter 18: Puppet Master the Riddler. Edward Nigma is one of Gotham's supervillains. He does not have any super abilities, but only the crimes he uses his high IQ to commit and the key riddles. He has deduced Batman's true identity, deceived Catwoman, and ruled Gotham, a high-level achievement, although it was only for a limited time. But now, he is just a depressed clerk and very annoying. At least no one will thank him today. Niji knew this very well. After all, after finishing the dissection, Nigma took Niji and mocked everyone. At that moment, Niji was so embarrassed that he felt like someone else's child. Everyone was embarrassed, especially since he had to take the chopped body back. Some things can be said, and some things cannot be said. Everyone understands this. But Nigma felt like he was missing a string in his head, perhaps because he despised those people in his heart, treating them like trash. He doesn't bother to join in the same trend with them, let alone have a good relationship with them. Except for himself, who is a genius. Everyone else is trash in his eyes. At most, the difference between big trash and little trash. A simple description is that his heart is as high as the sky, and no one is worthy of competing with him. He is the aloof one. This is the case we are investigating, codename Puppet Master. The Arkham Police Station conference room was dark, with only the blue light of the projector projecting photos on the wall. Director Wei Fei, who was sitting in the upper seat, raised his hand to cover his mouth with a cold expression. If you turn on the light, you would find that his face was as white as snow, and his throat was choked, and he was about to vomit. The photos on the projector showed deformed, stitched monsters that could no longer be called human beings. The hands turned into feet, the legs were transplanted to the belly, the skin was removed from the face and resewed, and the two people were pieced together into one person. They were sewn together like toy dolls, but without exception, they were all corpses, and the slides flashed one by one. Many police officers with poor psychological abilities in the conference room ran out in the dark, rushed into the toilet, and vomited. The faces of Niji and the others standing in the back didn't look very good, just like watching a horror movie, but what happened during the day raised their threshold. Looking at it now, it's just like this. This is the situation. This criminal has committed 11 consecutive crimes. The decedent has been able to confirm that there are 19 people. The policeman standing by the wall with a baton in his hand said, "The slide changed again. It was a map of Gotham. We have checked many places and narrowed the scope a lot. Now we can basically confirm that he is here." The black baton hit a triangular area on the map. and Director Wei Fei's face became even worse. That's where Arkham District is, and it's the most chaotic place in Gotham. I wonder what Chief Weaver has to say. Bullock took out a Camel cigarette and knocked it on the conference table. Ever since the projector light came on, he hasn't stopped smoking, and he has taken out all the cigarette butts in the ashtray. No, we will cooperate. Fully cooperate. Wei Fei quickly said that knowing that there was such a pervert in his jurisdiction, he couldn't sleep well at night. Maybe it was time to consider moving to a safer place. Last time my home was evacuated without anyone noticing, and now I encountered this pervert again. Ahem, let me say a few words. Bullock stood up, picked up the lighter, and lit the cigarette, and glanced around the room. There were not many people left. This time the Gotham Police Department will go all out. Originally, Chief James Gordon was in charge of this case, but because of the Red Hood robbery, he was temporarily unable to get involved, so I took charge. I only have one request. Let this perverted BD be completely finished. Bullock clenched his fist and slammed it on the conference table. His cold eyes were much stronger than his sloppy appearance. Well, I have a problem. Niji raised his hand and said, although the code name is Puppet Master, do we have information about the other party or specific information? No. Bullock said it very directly and to the point, as if he had said a very remarkable thing. I have only taken over this case for a few days, and I don't know the specifics, but some information will be sent tonight. Bullock turned to Director Weaver and said, we need to set up a command center here, and we also need manpower to help. I hope to get your support. No problem. You choose whatever you want. Wei Fei agreed immediately. As long as he was not chosen, anything would be fine. As for merit, as long as the case is solved in Arkham District, he will definitely be on the credit list. Even if it is not solved, his hard work is still there. That's good. Bullock turned to look at the conference room. There were not many people there, and there were still some people who were holding on. Those people, please come with me and form an office first. Bullock pointed at Niji and the others. After all, among a group of people who were trying not to vomit, a few guys with normal faces and no fear stood out. The light bulbs came on, and the conference room door opened. Meow Moo and the others walked out. Jerry covered his stomach and smacked his lips. Moo Moo, I'm hungry. As soon as he mentioned eating, the expressions of several other people suddenly changed, and that disgusting feeling came back. Mr. Nigma, do you want to go to dinner together? I know a good Mexican restaurant. Niji ran a few steps forward, followed up with Nigma in front, and extended a warm invitation. Nigma was a little surprised because few people invited him to dinner, so he stopped and thought about it. What should a three-legged cow be called? Nigma told another riddle and looked at Niji expectantly. It was obvious that if the answer was correct, they could go to dinner together. Cow, let's have a steak. Eat one of its legs. Miamu grinned and said boldly, Liu Bei would have paid 3 visits to the thatched cottage if he could capture the Riddler. Not to mention cows, even if they wanted to eat mermaids. Meow Moo also went to Adams Port to find a boat to catch one. There are very few people in Gotham who can rely on their IQ to compete with Batman. If they miss it, Niji can give himself a slap in the face first. Interesting, I told you first, if the steak is not delicious, I will flip the table. Nigma smiled and raised his hand to push up his glasses. If the steak is not delicious, I will definitely take the first step and turn the table over. I will never let you down. The smile on Niji's face became even stronger as she turned to Jerry and the others and shouted, Let's go together. I'm treating you. Except for Jerry, everyone else looked at each other, obviously hesitant. After all, they knew exactly what these two people did during the day, but with Bullock's words, everyone went. If you want to eat, would you mind taking me with you? Bullock, with a cigarette in his mouth and a bulging belly, walked out of the conference room and surrounded everyone to go to dinner with Niji. Chapter 19 Mexican Restaurant. Just downstairs from the apartment where Niji and the others live, the restaurant is very large and is a family business owned by the Carmen family. The current store owner, Pamela Carmen, and his wife have 6 sons and 3 daughters, and they run the store together as a family. As soon as you enter the store, you can see a super long bar inside. Behind the bar are the kitchen, fried chicken shop, bar, bakery, cold drink shop, and sushi shop. All kinds of food are laid out like a buffet restaurant. There are more than 30 small round tables in the store, which can seat 4 people. In the evening, this place also works as a bar, allowing some drunkards to get drunk here. But today, there are much fewer people here. The main thing is that a group of policemen in police uniforms eat here, and the effect is more immediate than spraying disinfectant powder. The owner of the restaurant, Pamela, is over 50 years old. Her hair is already gray, and she is wearing an apron and frying steaks next to the stove. His sons and daughters-in-law were preparing other food. There were more than 10 police officers who came, and their tastes were all different, so the whole family was busy. Except at the bar counter, Gia was holding a large glass of beer and vividly describing what happened today to the restaurant owner's 2 twin daughters. The surprising and strange case made the 2 women tremble and almost scream in fear. Because there were not many people in the restaurant, the policemen sat casually. Niji and Nimag sat at the same table. Sheriff Bullock sat at the table by himself, holding a glass of whiskey in his hand and a cigarette, but was thrown into the ashtray on the table. Okay, here comes the steak. Pamela Carmen walked out of the bar carrying 2 steaks, put the plates on the table, and stood with a smile on her face, waiting for comments. Just now, Niji asked Jerry to tell him that if the steak was not cooked well, he would destroy his shop. The knife and fork cut the steak on the dinner plate. Nigma took a bite and nodded. The taste is okay. If the heat is more stable, the taste will be better. The meat quality is slightly worse, 63 points. Pamela was a little confused and didn't know what it meant. Niji waved his hand. Bring me a bottle of good wine. I remember that you seem to have the red wine for the 50th anniversary of Wayne Manor. I bought it. The confusion on Pamela's face turned into surprise. That was the treasure of his store, a red wine specially released by the Wayne family Red Wine Manor 50 years ago. The starting price is $10,000, and now it's even more. Niji winked at him. Pamela was a little embarrassed, and Nigma was even more surprised. This treatment was a bit high. Well, just ordinary red wine. Niji stared at Pamela and said in a deep voice, I will give you 3 times the price. In total, I owe you a favor. Okay. Pamela gritted her teeth and agreed, mainly because Niji said he owed him a favor, not to mention whether it was money or not. These policemen were all invited by him. If he didn't give him face, his store would be really doomed. Pamela ran towards the bar, and Nigma said a little embarrassedly, There's really no need. Niji raised his hand to interrupt him. Edward, that's what I call you. I won't miss anything if I treat you to dinner. Otherwise, it would be disrespectful. I like talented people, but you are different. You are a genius. Nigma laughed. Everyone is willing to listen to good things, especially a person like him who is proud but cannot be recognized. If you consider me a friend, don't refuse. You are an extraordinary person, aren't you? Niji laughed. Nigma also laughed and looked at Niji with a much more pleasing look. Yes, he is an extraordinary person. Finally, someone saw it and recognized him. It's Wayne Manor's 50th anniversary. Pamela came over with a bottle of wine wrapped in thick yellow paper and also brought over a decanter and a red wine glass. The surrounding police officers also craned their necks and looked over curiously, wanting to see what the 50th anniversary of Wayne Manor looked like. Nigma felt these views and proudly pushed his chest forward to make himself sit more politely. Perhaps this is the first time in his life that he has attracted so much attention. Pamela opened the red wine with a corkscrew. The red wine, which was as rich as blood and had a faint fragrance, was poured into the decanter. Niji looked at the red wine with mixed feelings in her heart. What she was drinking was not wine, but money. Real money. But it's worth it. If you want to do it, do what others can't do. It's Nyang Shipi's fault. Niji really doesn't believe that anyone can be as willing as herself. Money is something external to the body. Spend it and earn it again. Niji comforted himself in his heart. Holding the red wine, Nigma looked at the red wine liquid in the cup, which looked like a cup of rich blood, and said with some emotion, The less you have, the more precious it is. Nigma picked up the wine glass, gestured to Niji, and clinked the 2 wine glasses. To my friend. Niji also said with a smile, I originally wanted to drink the glass of wine, but when I thought that this was my year's salary, my actions suddenly became more elegant. Sheriff Bullock, who watched from beginning to end, shook his wine glass and stared at Niji. He remembered one thing. During the Red Hood robbery, an Arkham police car chased him, and he happened to be on vacation at that time, and he had just come back. But I have seen that police car with more than 30 bullet holes in it and a door missing, which is enough to see the intensity of the time, which is not what those weaklings and trash can do. As for Flass from the Special Ops team, Brock curled his lips in disdain, but he also glanced at Niji and had a little more expectations. The wine has passed 3 rounds, and the food has passed the 5 flavors. The relationship between Nigma and Niji was also brought closer by this glass of wine, and they became friends who talked about everything. Edward, what kind of person is the puppet master you said we want to investigate? Niji asked while holding a fork and chewing steak. He really didn't know about this. After all, Professor Pig Noodles is the most famous person for human body suturing. Who is this puppet master? I only vaguely knew that there was such a villain, but I couldn't tell him anything specific. Doctor, surgeon, and the kind with good skills. Nigma slowly swayed the wine glass. His glasses had been taken off. His face was a little drunk, but his voice was very sober. Let me tell you, your guess is definitely this. Niji stretched out his thumb and gestured, making Nigma laugh. Do you remember that corpse? Although the suture scars on it were sutured with metal threads, they were definitely sutured by a doctor. They were so neat that they couldn't be produced after just a few years of practice. As Nigma spoke, he drew on the table with his fingers. Those trash in the police station. They only saw the deformation of the corpses, but did not realize that these corpses were being perfected. Each one was more complete than the last. Like, Niji took over and said, it's like upgrading. The puppet master is practicing to make better things. Nigma clapped his hands and said with a smile, you are 100 times better than those trash in the police station. Just a little worse than me. No, you are a genius that I can't catch. Ha ha. Nigma laughed, but the faces of the policemen around them were getting worse and worse. This piece of trash, that piece of trash, it was really disturbing. That guy wanted to make something very powerful, and he was almost finished. This body was drowned alive. His spine was broken, and he fell into the water and drowned. Moreover, Nigma's face suddenly became serious. The spine of this corpse was broken by someone. Chapter 20, Friend's Broken Spine? As soon as this topic came up, Niji thought of a person in his mind, Bane, a mercenary with high IQ and high strength, and one of Gotham's supervillains. That guy's peak achievement was to break Batman's spine, and he almost retired Batman. But Nigma's next words made Niji give up this idea, because it was a hammer that broke the corpse's spine. The two chatted until the evening, and Bullock and the others had already paid and left. It was obvious that Nigma's contemptuous tone made these colleagues very uncomfortable. He didn't even call him when he left, but this suited Niji's wishes. He got another police car from Sheriff Mize, just in time to send Nigma back. Jerry, give me the car keys. You go back later. I'll come back later to pay the bill. Niji walked over and got the keys from Jerry. The guy was still chatting with the 2 girls. He probably doesn't even know how much they spent here tonight. If he knew, he would definitely find a way to avoid the bill. Edward, let me take you back. Taxis in Arkham are not easy to take. Niji came over and said with the key. Edward Nigma picked up the glasses on the table and put them on. Seeing Niji's enthusiastic look, he felt a little embarrassed. This is troubling you. It's my honor to be with an elite like you. This way. Niji gestured with his hand. Although Nigma is a bit arrogant and has a bad mouth, he really doesn't drink well. He was already a little drunk after less than 3 glasses of red wine. Niji helped Nigma out of the Mexican restaurant, took the car keys to open the door of a police car parked on the roadside, and then helped him get into the car. Nigma, who was sitting in the passenger seat, raised his hands to rub his face, while Niji sat in the driver's seat and started the engine. Edward, where do you live? Niji asked while turning the steering wheel to make a U-turn. The street here is very narrow, and 2 cars traveling side by side cannot pass. The car lights in front were illuminating the darkness on the road. Nigma leaned against the window and slowly lowered the window to let in the night breeze. Slowly exhaling the breath of alcohol, Nigma looked at the approaching steel bridge and smiled drunkenly. A diamond plate, a glowing fireplace, a place you never leave. Where am I? Go home. Niji answered the question without thinking. Nothing is more reassuring than home. Ha! Nigma took off his glasses and laughed very happily. You actually know. You're the first person I have met who doesn't hate riddles. Those losers always blame me when they can't find the answer, instead of thinking that it's because they are too stupid. Hearing this, Meowji chuckled and said, Geniuses are not understood by others. If everyone can understand you, are you still a genius? Those ordinary people will not understand you. Genius? Ha, you're right. Nigma held the gold-rimmed glasses in his hand and looked at the surface of the Gotham River. The quiet waves flashed past the car window. Niji, thank you. This is the first time I have met an interesting person like you. You know, I didn't have many friends before. Then you now have our genius, Mr. Edward Nigma, and your friend Niji will be honored to send you home. Niji imitated the accent of the TV host and read aloud with a bit of tenor, which made Nigma laugh again. Number 32, Lower East Side, Sfit apartment building. Just send me there. I live at No. 32 on the 4th floor. Okowo. Niji immediately turned on his police lights, and the red and blue police lights flashed on the roof of the car. As soon as he drove into the Lower East Side, many people were frightened and ran away. The Sphere Apartments is an old Gothic apartment building, which is very common in the Lower East Side, with a decorative black gargoyle statue on the roof. Nigma got out of the police car and put on his glasses, turned around and leaned against the car window, waving his hands. This is a great night. Thank you, friend. Niji, who had just unbuckled his seatbelt, laughed with satisfaction when he heard these words. Good evening, friend. Watching Nigma walk into the apartment building, Niji opened the door, stood on the street, and took out a box of cool thin cigars from his arms, holding one in his mouth and lighting it with a lighter. Scanning the surroundings with vigilant eyes, there were a few sly gangsters on the opposite street. Niji held a thin cigar in his hand, opened his coat, and showed off his revolver. The gangsters left immediately after seeing the revolver. Rich people in Gotham may be humiliated, but people with guns will gain respect wherever they go. In the apartment building, Nigma returned to his home and skillfully turned on the light, and the room lit up. He took off his gold-rimmed glasses and placed them on the cabinet next to him. There was also a pair of black half-rimmed glasses on top. The room was neatly tidied, and there were many books on the bookshelf that separated the room. Nigma stood in front of an easel with a finished oil painting on it, and a paint tray and brushes next to it. The oil painting shows a man sitting on a sofa, staring at a green question mark in front of him. There's also a series of words written in white paint on the painting. I can fill a room or a heart. Others can have me, but I cannot be shared. What am I? Lonely. Nigma looked at the oil painting in silence, softly recited the answer to the puzzle, walked to the wall, and put down the phonograph stylus. Soft music sounded from inside, unintentionally seeing the swaying curtains. Nigma walked over and closed the window, but saw a flashing red in the darkness downstairs. He turned his head and looked outside, seeing that the police car was still parked in the same place. Nigma chuckled in surprise and quickly walked to the wall and turned off the lights. Niji, who was downstairs, was about to light another cigarette, but when he looked up, he saw that the lighted window on the 4th floor had turned dark. He seemed to be sleeping, so he threw away the cigarette but in his hand. Niji yawned and looked around again before driving the police car and leaving. Nigma, who was upstairs watching the police car leave here, had a meaningful smile in his eyes. The fewer you have, the more precious your friends are. After the police car left here, it drove towards the more shabby areas of the Lower East Side. It was already late at night. A black car stopped on the side of the road and saw the approaching police car flashing its double flashing lights. The police car stopped, and Niji got out of the car and walked towards the car. Oswald, who had just returned from duty at the Rome Casino, opened the door and yawned. Mr. Police Officer, you are really busy. Here you go. Oswald said jokingly as he took out an envelope from the car and threw it to Niji. The envelope was heavy. Thank you, that's a big help. Niji quickly took it. What are you doing in such a hurry for money? Oswald leaned against the car, inserted a cigarette into a thin cigarette holder, and lit one. Niji shook the 20,000 US dollars in his hand and said, "I used these bills to buy an SSS card." SSS card? What is that? Oswald raised his eyebrows, not quite understanding what Niji was talking about. Let's put it this way. I met a very powerful guy, and this place is very powerful. Niji pointed at his head. For example, if I am an S, then his brain can match 3 of me. Do you know what this concept is? I have a brain trust. When Oswald heard this, he looked like he suddenly understood something and seemed to have figured something out. Wait a minute, you mean you bribe with money? In short, you use this to bribe, and then you got a guy with a very powerful brain. People. Niji nodded, the show-off look and smile on his face not concealed at all. He was really happy. Oswald licked his lips with his tongue, as if he had made a heavy decision. I understand. What do you understand? Niji asked with some confusion. Nothing, but Oswald looked at the banknotes in Niji's hand, hesitated and asked, "Can I lend you a little less? What do you want to do? I know a few young people who are good at studies, but they don't have money to go to college. I thought I would sponsor them to go to college." What the hell are you? Niji swallowed the second half of his sentence. A gang member must also be a good person. 10,000. I can give you a free note over there. Thank you. Oswald took the 10,000 US dollars and said with a somewhat embarrassed smile, "Those guys are really good at studying. It's such a waste in such a rubbish place. I believe your decision is right. If I had more money, I would do the same." Niji reached out and patted Oswald on the shoulder. "The person you're looking for already has a clue. Call the puppet master. We will investigate him soon. I will let Otis inform you then. Pay attention to the rats around you." Mouse? Yes, you could prepare some bread. If a light brown mouse comes to you, it's called Bastion and he likes sweets. Niji smiled and waved his hands and walked towards the police car, leaving Oswald alone, who was thinking about what a mouse was. Chapter 21, Escalating Danger. When he went back that night, Niji settled the bill. In the end, there was still a shortfall of 5,000 yuan, so Jerry put on his gold necklace. There's still 2,000 yuan left. I'll make a white note. The store owner, Pamela, didn't expect that Niji actually gave him the money, so he was prepared to lose all his money. He forgot about the remaining 2,000 yuan and wrote off the IOU directly. The next day, an investigation team for the doll case was formed. The team leader is Sergeant Bullock of the Gotham Police Department and 4 police officers from the Gotham Police Department. The office of the Arkham Police Department is headed by Sergeant Mays, who discovered the body and called the police. A cart full of information was handed over from the Gotham Police Department, and boxes were delivered to the office. Niji and the others were also looking through the information. Chief James Gordon, who was originally in charge of the case, had almost investigated the matter. The puppeteer, Barton Mathis, is a 43-year-old male, white American, and a surgical specialist at Mercy Hospital on the Upper West Side. The first case was discovered at Charity Hospital. The body of a decedent had been mutilated and his skin had been peeled off. "Niji, here is your package." An Arkham police officer knocked on the door and said, holding a stack of photos and looking through seedlings, he was a little confused when he heard this. Package? He didn't buy anything? I walked out and took a look. It was a rectangular object wrapped in newspaper, which looked like a book. Niji cautiously put his ear to it and listened for a moment. Not to mention, it was a time bomb. After making sure it was okay, he tore open the newspaper outside. Inside was a green notepad with a big question mark on the cover. As soon as he saw this sign, he knew who sent it to him: Edward Nygma, the Riddler. Open the notepad, and sure enough, the first page is a riddle. What is cruel, poetic, and blind? If you deny it, you will find that it is actually full of violence. Niji read this riddle, thought for a moment, and turned the page. The answer was on the back: justice. There is also a signature below, to Edward Nygma's friend, Mr. Niji. This guy. Niji laughed and looked through the notes at the back, which were about the specific circumstances of the doll case. Nygma analyzed and speculated on this case when he was idle and bored. According to his speculation, the puppet master was constantly experimenting with these things, just like spliced monsters. And his ultimate goal is the living monster. From the first corpse to the corpse found yesterday, it can be inferred that he has succeeded. That corpse was a living monster. Although it had been soaked and rotted, his autopsy also found some things. The internal organs were severely damaged, the body was damaged extensively, and the spine was broken. The corpse suffered a very brutal battle before death, and there were traces of implants in the head. Seeing this, Niji's expression became serious. This page was a sketch, which was a comparison of the image of the 2-meter-2 monster and the height of the person marked with Niji. It's a bit tricky. Niji frowned, took out a thin cigar from his pocket, and took one. To deal with such a big guy, you still need to prepare some heavy firepower, and you're not sure how many monsters the opponent has. Gotham is a hellish place with everything. Mumu, it's a meeting. Jerry ran out of the office and shouted. Niji put out the cigarette butts and walked toward the office. Bullock, who had just finished a phone call, came over with a piece of information, threw it on the table, knocked on the blackboard covered with photos, and shouted. Everyone, after reading the information, it's time to talk. Do you have any ideas on where we can find this BD pervert? I have an opinion. Niji raised his hands and stood up. First, we found the medical equipment used by the puppet master in the sewers and determined that he was in the Arkham district, but we don't know where he is. Second, why don't we change our mind? Instead of looking for him, we look for the monsters or the raw materials for the monsters. He needs people, and he also needs the medicines needed to make monsters. Niji picked up a copy of yesterday's autopsy report, as well as the autopsy reports of the first few cases. He needs living people now to carry out his suturing business. So he needs a stable place, sufficient medicine, enough equipment, and human body materials. Then, where do you think we should go to investigate? Bullock stood nearby, holding the information he just threw on the table, and asked. Black market. Start checking with drugs. Niji said without any scruples. There are only 2 regular hospitals in Arkham District, but there are many private clinics. We only need to check them one by one to find them. This guy needs money. His current crimes are all for experiments. That is to say, he can't get money through other methods. Is it possible that he is still using surgery to make money? After Niji finished speaking, everyone in the conference room started talking, and Bullock handed the information in his hand to Niji. You were right at least a few days ago, and that's what happened this morning. Niji took the information and glanced at it. It was about a case where a cash transport truck was robbed. On 12th Avenue in the Upper West Side, at 7 o'clock this morning, a cash transport truck was robbed. 3 escorts died, 2 were seriously injured, and $7 million in cash on the armored transport truck was robbed. In the surveillance photos of the scene, there were 3 figures, one of which was exceptionally huge and had 4 arms. The other one is a fat dwarf less than 1 meter tall, and there's a strange woman wearing a white nurse uniform and holding a sledgehammer. At least judging from the figure, she should be a woman, otherwise the hemispherical bulge on the chest would be a bit too outrageous. There was only a blown sewer cover at the scene, and the 3 monsters took the money and left the scene through the sewer. Niji was also speechless. Judging from the appearance above, he had become an expert in cultivation, and things were getting difficult to handle. Now, the Gotham Police Department has listed this matter as the #1 case and has a deadline of 3 days to solve the case. Chief Gordon has led people to search along the crime scene. Bullock was quite helpless when he said this. Ever since the Red Hood robbery, the men above felt like they had been forcibly massaged by 100 big men, and they couldn't stand any stimulation. Next year's mayoral election will be another good show. I still stick to my original view and suggest checking the black market, especially sources with the ability to mobilize large quantities of drugs. After thinking deeply, Niji continued, if I were a puppet master and now have this kind of monster under my command, the next step must be to expand the number of these monsters and create a monster army to rule Gotham. Ha ha ha, Niji, are you dreaming? Brock laughed directly. This sounded too fantasy. A gang of robbers wants to rule Gotham City. This joke sounds really funny. Chief Bullock, we bet. He will definitely look for those drugs. Otherwise, what would he do with the money? Niji said seriously. Bullock waved his hand. My mission is to go to the sewer entrance to block and reinforce it. But if I were to make a bet, what would I bet on? Just bet $100. Niji didn't care about anything else and reached into his pocket to take out the last living expenses. I bet that guy will definitely appear in the black market. I want to know who the biggest illegal drug dealer in Gotham is. Niji slapped the $100 in his hand on the table, and the people around him looked at him in surprise. Everyone in Gotham knows that in the category of illegal drugs, only Sal Maroni from the Triangle Point area has this ability. Are you serious? Bullock hesitated for a moment, as if he was considering whether he could do this. Sir Sheriff, even if you lose, you won't lose anything, right? Jerry, go to the sewage treatment plant to find Otis and ask him to rush to Triangle Point and notify Oswald by the way. Niji was holding a Beretta 92F pistol that Bullock had lent him, as well as a black market location in the Cape Triangle area. Warehouse number 461, Binshue Road. Jerry followed behind and said with some worry, Moo, can you go by yourself? I can't go there by myself, so I asked you to find Otis. Those guys will definitely escape to the sewers on the other side of Triangle Point. Niji took out the car keys and found a tan Dodge sedan. It was Bullock's special car. Every sergeant-level officer had his own special sedan. When he opened the trunk, Niji's eyes widened. There were 2 pieces of body armor in the trunk, as well as a Remington M870 shotgun, a type specially used by police to break down doors. FK, this is a police car. Niji picked up a body armor and threw it to Jerry, hugged him hard. Brother, work hard. Jerry held the body armor and watched Niji drive away at speed. He came to his senses and ran towards another Arkham police car and went straight to the sewage treatment plant. Niji stepped on the accelerator and drove all the way, biting a thin cigar, raised his hand to put on his sunglasses, and held the steering wheel. Ding! Adventure treasure hunting has been refreshed. Please explore by yourself. Chapter 22 Batman, the Triangle Point area. Located in the southwest corner of Gotham City, is one of the key shipping hubs and is also where the Triangle Point shipyard is located. At the warehouse at number 461 Ben High Road, the rolling shutter door at the door was closed, and there were 2 gang members in suits standing at the door. In the warehouse, a shady transaction was going on, but as the seller, Sal Maroni, looked at the banknotes on the ground that had not even been exchanged in the box, and the expression on his face was indescribably weird, especially on the old-fashioned black and white TV set next to it. The case of the robbery of the armored truck was being broadcast. The host of Gotham TV, Big Mouth Toge, was shouting again with his surprised voice and exaggerated expression. Oh, my God, what's going on in Gotham City? A 4-armed gorilla can come out and rob. So aliens are going to invade the Earth tomorrow. Drip! The TV is turned off. Maroni stood up, picked up the wine glass on the side, and took a sip. There is no problem with the banknote. Delivery. A container loader drove over. Inside were 2 large wooden boxes with skulls and skulls as danger signs spray-painted on them. As the buyer, Barton Mathis, showed a happy smile on his face, and the 2-meter-tall monster draped in canvas behind him also raised his head and looked at the loader. Whoos, dang. A metallic collision sounded. Attracting everyone to look over, one of the lights on the loader was blown out. It was a black dart. Who? Maroni quickly turned around and shouted. The surrounding gang members also took out their firearms, pistols, and submachine guns, scanning the surroundings with full firepower. It's him. A gang member pulled out the dart from the car light. It was a black bat-shaped dart. Maroni's face suddenly turned gloomy. In recent Gotham legends, a big bat would come out of the darkness to attack bad guys and gang members. Pretending to be a ghost, Maroni snorted coldly and walked towards the ladder next to the warehouse with a wine glass in hand. Several painful groans suddenly sounded from behind. Maroni quickly turned around and saw that 3 gang members had been killed on the iron platform on the 2nd floor. The muffled sound came from there. Where? A gang member holding an Uzi submachine gun pointed at the ceiling in the upper right corner. It was pitch black over there. The windows in this warehouse are blocked for the convenience of transactions and for confidentiality. Even if the lights are not turned on during the day, it is difficult to see clearly, let alone the dark ceiling. Chug, tug, tug, tug. A series of bullets hit the ceiling, and the bullets collided with the iron frames, causing a series of sparks. There is nothing there. Manilow looked over there with wide eyes, and Barton Mathis, who was checking the goods, also felt something was wrong and quickly pressed a remote control in his hand. In the sewer outside the warehouse, two figures are approaching. "Are you looking for me?" A cold and ruthless voice sounded behind Maroney. Maroney quickly turned his head and saw that there was nothing behind him. Ah! A gang member was suddenly pulled into the air by a rope, then thrown down and passed out. This kind of situation that only happens in horror movie scenes makes other people nervous and afraid of looking at those dark places. "Don't panic," Manilow just shouted. A frightened gang member took the submachine gun in his hand and pulled the trigger at the places where the light could not reach. Chug, tug, tug, tug. The sparks of bullet collision lit up in the darkness, and others also pulled the triggers one after another. Whoosh, whoosh. A series of sounds broke through the air, and several bat darts flew out from the shadows. A gang member who was shooting was hit in the neck by a dart and passed out. Several other batarangs seemed to have eyes, hitting the hands of those who were shooting. The gang members covered their hands and screamed one after another. "Who? Come out!" Maroney held a pistol and stood on the stairs, shouting loudly. The gang members below were already frightened, and the slightest movement would cause them to shoot. "I'm here!" Maroney heard the voice behind him, turned around, and pulled the trigger without thinking. But when he turned around, what he saw was a black fist hitting him hard in the face. Maroney was knocked away from the stairs by the punch, hit a wooden box, fell to the ground, and screamed. His mouth was filled with scarlet blood, and there was a broken tooth that he spat out. Thump, thump, thump. The footsteps sounded from the stairs. Every footsteps echoed in the warehouse and seemed to be tapping on other people's doors. Hard. The remaining gang members held guns and looked nervously at the stairs. There was nothing. The sound of swallowing and spitting made them even more worried that they were not facing human beings. And on the ceiling, directly above the warehouse, Batman, Bruce Wayne, is holding on to a wire rope and looking down at the nervous gang members below. 4, 5, 6, 7 people, 20 seconds. Batman grabbed the rope and fell to the ground in less than a second, landing among those people. Imagine suddenly there's an extra person behind you. What kind of scene?
No more novels? Take part in the voting. The most requested novels and those with the most likes will be chosen for publication on euroaudiobooks.com. There, I can upload as much as I want without the risk of receiving a strike. Our 18 novels and other content that exceed what is morally acceptable are only published on Patreon or the free novels page. Remember, the site is funded by donations on Ko-fi and Patreon memberships.